Full Metal Storm, Battle of the Machines. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 420. Are you guys tired of living? Wancheng was unhappy in his heart, but he did not show it on his face. He said lightly, "It's okay, little Chigi is still young, and he doesn't understand many rules yet. It's okay, you're young, just learn slowly." Next to Luo Yan, Yang Heo's eyes flashed, and he whispered, "Old thing, you are taking advantage of your age." Zuru Heo immediately said angrily, "What did you say? If you have the guts, say it louder." He pointed at Luo Yan again. "How do you become someone's boss? Your subordinates are so ignorant. The upper beam is not straight, and the lower beams are crooked." Humph. Yang Heo narrowed his eyes immediately, and then heard Luo Yan next to him say calmly, "You are right. My subordinate is indeed ignorant." When Yang Heo heard this, his eyes couldn't help but darken. But Luo Yan then said, "Yang Heo, next time you have something to say, speak louder. Otherwise, what if the elders can't hear you?" Yang Heo's eyes immediately became arrogant. He looked at Luo Yan next to him and said loudly, "Yes." He looked at the fat man, grinned and said loudly, "Fatty, you are deaf, right? Then I will say it again. Old man, don't take advantage of your age. How about it? Did you hear it? Still can't hear it? Come on, say it with me." Behind him, the 10 good players he brought shouted in unison, "Old man, don't take advantage of your age." The sound echoed throughout the temple street. Zuzaheo was stunned. Wancheng was also stunned. The others all turned into stone sculptures. They didn't expect that the Chigi people were so arrogant. At this time, Luo Yan looked at the fat man and said calmly, "How about it? Did you hear it clearly this time?" Wancheng squeezed the iron gall with a little force, pinching the iron gall with a faint fingerprint. His face twitched, and he showed a forced smile. "Little friend Chigi, you are so funny. Come on, please come this way. It's almost the new year. Let's calm down, and don't hurt the harmony." The group came to the round table, and took their seats. Luo Yan looked around, his eyes swept over the faces, and took in the information of these people one by one. This time, he didn't see anyone from the Huanquan organization. At the round table, Wancheng glanced at his confidant Zuru Heo, who understood and said loudly, "Bosses, it's rare for us to gather together today. Why not take this opportunity to discuss the big plan together? What do you think?" The Uncle Ya who was sitting next to Wancheng laughed, glanced at Wancheng inconspicuously, and then looked at Luo Yan. "If we talk about who has the strongest momentum and the strongest people this year, it is naturally the Red Gate of Friend Chigi. Friend Chigi, how about you take the lead and lead us all to make money?" Immediately, several people followed suit. Only Guan Qi of Jiuying, Yuzun of Dark Blood, Ding Ding Gao of Ding Shengxing and a few others did not express their opinions. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly, and in his field of vision, the voices of those people were clearly visible. He did not expose the calculations in these people's minds, and said calmly, "Oh, then what do you think we should do at Hangman? If you have any opinions, you might as well say them directly." Zuru Heo, who was sitting at the opposite table, immediately said, "The Jiuying group that your Hangman recently acquired has a building in the city center. I think, can we use this as a basis to let Hangman lead everyone to do business in the city?" Luo Yan said calmly in the mask, "You mean, raise funds to do business?" Zuru Heo leaned back in his chair, smoked a cigarette, exhaled a puff of smoke and said, "That's about it. If everyone takes out a share of the money and does business together, isn't it better than fighting each other?" Luo Yan said lightly, "I don't know how the funds for this fundraising will be allocated." Zuru Heo leaned forward and laughed. "It's very simple. I've calculated that if we can raise tens of millions of work points, the money will be enough. And you, Hangman, made a lot of money last year. Just by annexing Jiuying group, you must have earned tens of millions, right? How about this? Hangman will take out 50 million as initial investment. We can barely get together a few million and follow you to make some money. You, Hangman, won't not take us with you, right?" Wen Zhao's eyes changed when he heard this. He was about to say something, but he saw Luo Yan raised his hand. Then he heard his master say, "Then how do you plan to distribute the profits?" Zuru Heo laughed and said, "Boss Chigi is really a straightforward person, so I will also speak frankly. Although we let Hangman pay more, we will not take advantage of Hangman. We may not be able to pay much, but we still have the strength. When the time comes, we will do more work to replace the funds. As for the distribution of profits, Hangman has paid the majority of the funds after all, so I think you should take 30%. The rest, we will share it. Boss Chigi, don't feel at a disadvantage. After all, we have more people and work harder. Although we took 70% of the profits, after so many bosses share it, each organization and gang will not get much. In the end, you Hangman are still the winners. What do you think?" Luo Yan was silent for a moment, and then said, "Really? Then, those who agree with Mr. Zhu, please raise your hands." Zuru Heo immediately raised his hand and said loudly, "What are you waiting for? Boss Chigi is making money with everyone. Raise your hands quickly." The others looked at each other, and after a few seconds, Uncle Ye finally raised his arm. After that, one after another, people raised their hands in agreement. Finally, when Wancheng also raised his hand, the only ones who did not raise their hands were Guanqi from Jiuying, Yuzun from Dark Blood, and Ding Dingao. Looking around, 90% of the people at the table raised their hands in agreement. Zuru Heo stood up at this time and laughed. "It seems that everyone agrees, so this matter is settled. I'll ask the lawyer to draw up a contract later, and I'll pick an auspicious day and deliver it to Hangman in person." The fat man poured a glass of wine for Luo Yan, and then said, "Come on, let me toast to the Red Ghost boss first." He raised his head and drank, full of heroic spirit. But after drinking, Zuru Heo found that Luo Yan had no intention of touching the glass at all. Zuru Heo's face suddenly fell, and he said in a deep voice, "Boss Chigi, what do you mean by this? You don't intend to drink this toast, do you?" Luo Yan then said lightly, "From the beginning to the end, I have been asking for your opinions. It seems that you have never asked for my opinion. Or do you think my opinion is not important?" He looked at the wine glass in front of him and said calmly, "Let us, Hangman, take out 50 million, but give us 30% of the profits. You contribute? Tell me, how much is the effort worth? Or do you think I'm a fool and a sucker?" Luo Yan paused, then raised his head, and looked at those who raised their hands just now. "Are you tired of living?" Chapter 421 Happy New Year. Bang. On the round table, the cup in front of Luo Yan suddenly exploded, and the aroma of wine filled the air. Zuru Heo changed color and said, "What do you mean?" Luo Yan raised his head and glanced at the fat man. "Although I know that you are a chess piece on the table, it is not your fault. But since you are willing to be a chess piece for others, willing to charge for others, I think you are also ready to be cannon fodder, right?" As he spoke, Luo Yan exuded a ray of amber light that was difficult to detect with the naked eye. It came to Zuru Heo like a tentacle. A little green firefly rose in the light. It was the poisonous essence refined by the toxins in the small temple on Temple Street. When it came to the front of the amber light, the tentacle-like light touched the back of the fat man's neck. The green firefly was injected into Zuru Heo's body. Zuru Heo's heart was in turmoil because of Luo Yan's words. Suddenly, he felt an itch on the back of his neck and couldn't help reaching out to grab it. At that time, he grabbed a bloody piece of flesh. Ding Dingao, who was sitting next to him, was startled and quickly got up and left. Zuru Heo was unaware of this and gave Wancheng an apologetic smile. "It's a little itchy, so itchy." He scratched here and there, and suddenly he was covered in blood. While scratching, Zuru Heo stopped moving, and his fat body fell to the ground with a bang, and white foam came out of his mouth. He was dead. Hiss, now there was a gasp. Who would have thought that Zuru Heo, who was still talking and full of vigor just now, would suddenly die? And judging from the death, it seems that he was poisoned. Who poisoned him? When was he poisoned? Suddenly, voices rang around the round table. Some people looked at Luo Yan and shouted, "Red Ghost, did you kill the person?" Luo Yan nodded and admitted it generously. The man shouted, "Come here, arrest the people from Hangman." Immediately, hundreds of big men at the nearly 100 round tables on Temple Street stood up. Luo Yan looked at Yang Hao and said, go, stand up and die, sit down and live. Kill all those who don't want to sit down. Come back after killing them, and you will be rewarded with a combat skill. As long as the others come back alive, they will be rewarded with 100,000 work points. Suddenly, Yang Hao and his men's eyes lit up. They walked to the street corner. Yang Hao laughed and shouted, did you hear that, you rubbish? Our master said, sit back and you will live. Dare to stand up, die. He raised his hand, and the 10 good men behind him rushed over, and with a knife in his hand, he chopped down the people standing in the front, bringing a large amount of blood. In front of the small temple, the gang leaders at the round table were about to stand up, but suddenly they felt an invisible pressure covering the whole place, which made them a little breathless. In this small square, a faint sound of tides came from nowhere, rumbling like thunder, making everyone tremble with fear. Then the leader of the Red Gate, the red ghost wearing a wooden mask, slowly said, what I said just now will also work on you. If you don't believe it, you can give it a try. He had secretly separated amber light, and each light emitted green firefly poison light, and distributed it next to those who raised their hands just now. As long as they made any unusual movements, they would be injected with deadly poison. Only Guan Qi, Yuzhan and Ding Ding Gao did not raise their hands to express their opinions, so Luo Yan let them go. Wan Cheng and others had a change of expression in their eyes, and they were shocked and afraid in their hearts. They naturally remembered what Luo Yan had said just now. Standing to die, sitting down to live. This can also be regarded as follow me and prosper, go against me and perish. At that moment, including that Uncle Yap, they all looked at Wan Cheng. Wan Cheng looked at Guan Qi, hoping that they, the 9 Phoenix, would express their opinions. Guan Qi, however, seemed to have nothing to do with her, and her whole mind was absent. Wan Cheng gritted his teeth, looked at Luo Yan, and said in a deep voice, little friend Chigi, Zuru Hao just made a suggestion, and you killed him. Our brothers just stood up, and you took action. Don't you think you are too domineering? Luo Yan asked back, do I have to wait until someone holds a knife to my neck before I can take action? Sorry, I don't have this habit. Since you want to attack my Red Gate, you must be prepared for my counter-attack, right? Under the table, Wan Cheng quietly kicked Yuzhan lightly, wanting to invite him to join in the fight and subdue Chigi. But Yuzhan closed his eyes, as if he was asleep, and was unmoved. Wan Cheng listened to the loud killing sounds on the street, and his eyes were even more red, and he was immediately confused. The 2 iron galls in his hands had long been deformed by him, but he dared not take action. At this time, facing Luo Yan's pair of red eyes, Wan Cheng's whole body was shocked, knowing that he was finally intimidated by the momentum of the Chigi, so that he did not have the usual decisiveness. He had already lost to his opponent psychologically. How could he win if he tried to attack again? At that moment, Wan Cheng sighed. He winked at Uncle Yan next to him. The old man smiled and said, little friend Chigi, we have no intention of joining forces to target you. That was just what Zuru Hao's family said. We just followed suit for fun. Look, should you ask your noble family to stop misunderstanding? Just talk it out. There's really no need to make a big fuss. How about this? We will drink 3 cups as punishment to make amends to you. Luo Yan said calmly, let's drink 3 cups as punishment. That's not necessary. But the suggestion made by the surname Zhu just now is not useless. Just need to work out the details. For example, you can jointly invest 50 million, and I, Hangman, will contribute 10 million. Let's make the business stronger and bigger together. As for the profit, you can take 30%, which is enough. We, Hangman, will cover the rest for you. What do you think? The lion opened his mouth. Wan Cheng almost couldn't help but attack, but he still sat there without moving. His hands were so tight that they were deformed by the armrests. He didn't dare to say a word, and the others didn't even dare to breathe. Looking at the leader of the Black Owl, Wan Cheng saw that the people from the Red Gate didn't stop. Although Yang Hao only had a dozen people, with the mad dog surnamed Yang rushing in front, there were already many people on the street, but they were slaughtered like chickens and ducks, and they couldn't make a difference at all. If they were allowed to kill, I'm afraid all their belongings would be slaughtered. He could only suppress his anger and nodded slightly. Uncle Ya hurriedly said, as you say, as you say. Luo Yan then made a gesture. Wen Zhao laughed, walked forward slowly, cleared his throat and shouted, "Yang Heo, I told you to stop." On the street, Yang Heo had turned into a bloody man. He raised his head and looked at him with a grim smile. There were shadows in front of him, and everyone retreated. Some big men even had trembling legs and sat back in their chairs. Hearing Wen Zhao's voice, Yang Heo licked his bloody fingers and turned back. Ding, ding, ding. From the distant city, the bell rang at 12 o'clock in the morning, and fireworks bloomed in the sky above the underground city. Even the ground at the end of Temple Street was illuminated by fireworks. Luo Yan stood up, looked around, and said lightly, "Everyone, Happy New Year." Chapter 422 Mobilization. The third day of the first lunar month. Luo Yan had just finished breakfast in the cafeteria when she received a notice that the students who stayed in school should gather in the auditorium. She didn't know what was going on. Bei held the half-eaten bun in both hands. "Are there any activities today?" Luo Yan shook her head to indicate that she didn't know, and then glanced at her. Bei stuffed the bun into her mouth with force, stuffing her cheeks so full. "Zhao, go," she said vaguely. On the way, the girl who ate the bun raised her head and said, "Student Luo, you are about to break through, right?" Luo Yan nodded, then reached out and took off a small piece of bun skin that was stuck to Bei's mouth. Bei blushed and quickly took out a small mirror to look at herself, so as not to be laughed at by classmates in the auditorium later if there was something on her face. After putting away the mirror, she grinned. "Me too. Teacher Wei said that he would teach me the advanced realm later. Senior, he is about the same progress. Everyone is very powerful." As the two were talking, they came to the auditorium. As soon as they walked in, they heard some discussions. "Do you know what it is?" "I don't know. I haven't had breakfast yet. Can someone bring me something to eat?" "I think it's about the big sports meeting. It was supposed to be held before the new year. Wasn't it postponed because of the sudden situation in Changping?" "It's possible. I have to perform well in the big sports meeting, held every 3 years. Come on, you're not even at the intermediate level. If you go on the court, you'll just give points to the other side. Are you just thinking about performing? I'm different. The main purpose of my participation in the sports meeting this time is to make friends. One more friend, one more connection, and a broader vision." Luo Yan and Bei walked into the auditorium and were about to walk to a corner when they heard a familiar voice behind them. "Old Luo, Happy New Year." Luo Yan turned around and saw Zheng Shan. Behind this tall young man, there were Li Boheng, Lin Cheng, Shen Yu, Li Zi and others. They were all first-year classmates. Afterwards, Luo Yan saw second-year students such as Yang Likei and Liu Ruohan. These people were not students who stayed on campus. They seemed to have been called back by the school. Looking at the situation, it seemed that they were really related to the big sports meeting. A moment later, the door at the back of the auditorium opened, and several figures walked in one after another. The one walking in front was the principal Pan Rinfeng, who was holding an old cat. Then came Wei Fenghua, who coughed from time to time, the gentle Zioshi, and 3 or 4 other teachers. As soon as the principal and teachers came in, the students in the auditorium became quiet. Even Yang Likei did not dare to act rashly in front of the principal and teachers. Not to mention the others. Pan Rinfeng walked up to the stage holding the old cat. Without taking the microphone, he coughed dryly and said with full energy, "Students, Happy New Year." The students immediately responded in unison. "Principal and teachers, Happy New Year." Pan Rinfeng smiled, let go of his hand, and let the cat jump to the ground, squatting at his feet and licking its fur. The old principal said, "I guess you clever guys should have guessed the purpose of calling everyone back this time, so I won't keep you in suspense. Yes, that's right. This time, we called you back mainly for the grand sports meet. Before, due to the sudden situation in Changping City, there were personnel transfers in the 4 cities of Guangling, Qingyang, and Pingyao, and there were students from various colleges in them. Therefore, the grand sports meet that was supposed to be held before the new year was temporarily postponed. Until after the new year, the grand sports meet organizing committee decided to hold this event after the Lantern Festival. So, today the school called back all the students on campus, as well as some students who had participated in the Forbidden Land combat and performed well. The purpose is to use the remaining 2 weeks or so to give everyone special training. I hope you will win glory for our Basin College at the Grand Sports Meet. Strive to take down Cheyenne College for me this year. Luo Yan was stunned. There was a stone tablet at the entrance of Basin College with the word sword pointing to Cheyenne written on it. Luo Yan thought it was just to show the college's mind and magnanimity. So sword pointing to Cheyenne refers to the so-called Cheyenne College. Special training? Okay, the teacher will give us some special training. Watch me scare Tang Yaoying and his friends at the beginning of the school year. My grades are not very good. Can I not participate? I don't even want to go to the big sports meet. If I go, I will just hold everyone back. Special training is good. Watch me show my prowess at the big sports meet. Maybe I can even win the girl. Are there any rewards? I always feel unmotivated without rewards. Various voices rang out in the auditorium. The students all had their own ideas, including Luo Yan. He wanted to go to the big sports meet to see it, but what he wanted more was to go to the desperate battlefield like the third graders to train. At this time, Pan Rinfeng made a gesture of pressing his hands down and said, "Quiet. Next, Teacher Wen Fenghe will explain the situation to everyone." The old principal bent down, picked up the cat on the ground, and walked aside. Wen Fenghe came to the front of the stage, looked around, and said with a smile, "In principle, all students from all 3 grades of the college will participate in the grand sports meet. Of course, the college will not force everyone. Those who don't want to participate can stay. There will be teachers staying in the school, and you can continue to study and practice here. Everyone who actively signs up can get 50 credits. These 50 credits will be awarded to everyone regardless of the result. In addition, there will be corresponding rewards for outstanding performance in the grand sports meet, or even for the school to rank in the top 3. Therefore, I still encourage everyone to actively participate. Of course, some students may not need these rewards, but participating in the grand sports meet will allow you to face outstanding students from other dungeons. It will also be good for your growth. At least it can serve as a sharpening tool. The purpose of our college has always been to encourage everyone to communicate more with the outside world and not to work in isolation. I hope everyone will remember this. Then next, let me talk about special training. Although the special training is for all students in the auditorium, in fact, the nearly 2-week special training focuses more on those students who have better performance in actual combat in the forbidden area. Therefore, there are still differences in the training plans between ordinary students and these outstanding students. After Wei Fenghe finished his explanation, he also divided the classes into ordinary classes and advanced classes. Luo Yan was naturally assigned to the advanced class. However, after Wei Fenghe announced the disbandment, he found his mentor. "Teacher Wei, do I have to participate in the special training?" Luo Yan did not want to participate in the special training, but he also had the identity of Red Devil and could not devote himself to the special training like other students. Wen Fenghe looked at his favorite student and smiled and said, "Your situation is special. In fact, it doesn't matter, even if you don't participate in the special training. But if you are free, you should show up. The college supports your decision in principle, but you must also take into account the feelings of other students." Luo Yang nodded to show his understanding. Wen Fenghe added, "In addition, I have already picked a technique for you. Come to the training hall to find me in the afternoon." Chapter 423, Selection of Advanced Techniques. Afternoon, training hall. When Luo Yan arrived, Wen Fenghe was already there. The instructor clenched his fist and coughed twice. "Regarding your martial arts, I have discussed with the principal, and finally we reached a consensus that it is very suitable for you to practice the Yan Yang Sutra." Yan Yang Sutra. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly. Wen Fenghe nodded and smiled. The Yan Yang Sutra is an advanced martial arts, and at the same time, it is also a prerequisite for the Tangxuan Realm Martial Arts Heavenly Fire record. However, our school does not have Tangxuan Realm Martial Arts. You have to exchange it with the Strategic Palace yourself. Luo Yang nodded slightly, just like learning viewing mountains and seas before. He did not interrupt, but listened attentively. Wen Fenghe continued. The main object of visualization in the Yan Yang Sutra is the sun. Visualize the sun's light and temperature, and eventually a scorching sun will be nurtured in your body. That is also the fire needed in the Cheyenne Holu. In addition, the name of the technique is Yan Yang, not Yang Yan. Therefore, after you practice, although there will be fire intentions, there will be no fire signs. After practicing the Yan Yang Sutra, the nature of your Yuanli will quietly change, becoming brighter and hotter. The technique will also affect your combat skills and unique skills, causing them to undergo corresponding changes, thereby making your attacks more powerful. It's the same as the primary and intermediate techniques. The practice of the Yan Yang Sutra is also divided into 5 levels and several realms of great perfection. In addition, since it is a technique for visualizing the sun, it is best to practice it during the day, especially at noon. Secondly, it is stronger on the surface than underground, and stronger on the peak than on the ground. In short, the closer to the sun, the better the effect. Of course, you don't have to force yourself to do this. You just need to practice during the day. As for practicing at noon, on the ground, or on the top of a mountain, you can be flexible and adaptable depending on the situation. Luo Yang nodded continuously, and wrote down everything Wen Fenghua said. Then, Wen Fenghua began to teach him the first level of practice. The key point of this first level of practice is to imagine the scene of the scorching sun in the sky, and then imagine the sunlight penetrating the human body like a dark cloud. Those warm and dazzling rays of light constantly wash the acupoints and make them glow and heat one after another. Finally, they merge into one and become a halo. When the halo appears at the end of the practice, the first level is completed. With the previous 2 stages of learning, Luo Yan is now learning advanced exercises. Both in terms of comprehension and learning progress, he quickly mastered the tricks. The next step is to practice by himself, and Wei Fenghua will give him some advice. In the evening, Luo Yan has basically mastered the key points of the first level of practice. In the future, he can practice by himself without Wei Fenghua's guidance. That night, Luo Yan came to Jude building as the Red Ghost, and checked Yang Tao's progress in cultivation. Then he gave Yang Hao the most basic combat skill, Thunder, as a reward for the temple street that day. After doing this, Luo Yan asked someone to find Guanpeng, intending to meet the mecha teacher he mentioned. While he had time, Luo Yan took out his mobile phone and entered the store page of Black Witch, wanting to choose an advanced technique for himself. After all, after reaching the advanced level, the technique has a certain degree of personal color. Before, in the intermediate level, Luo Yan and the Red Ghost could share the technique of viewing mountains and seas, because viewing mountains and seas is a basic technique, and is relatively common. Even if there are not many people practicing it, it will at least not arouse suspicion. But in the advanced level, Luo Yan and the Red Ghost shared the Yan Yang Jing again. If someone with a keen eye investigates it, they will find many suspicious places. Therefore, it is very necessary to practice 2 different techniques. In addition, Luo Yan has already asked Wei Fenghua for advice on practicing different techniques. Of course, he did not explain the reason, but just expressed curiosity. According to Wei Fenghua, there are people who practice 2 kinds of skills at the same time, but they are few. This is because, if you want to keep pace with the 2 skills at the same time, there is no doubt that the time spent on each realm is twice or even several times that of other people. For example, if there is a conflict between the 2 skills, it will be more costly than the gain. The compromise is to practice 2 non-conflicting skills, and then 1 main and 1 secondary. Although it is a bit strenuous to practice 2 skills, it also has its advantages. That is, it is not easy to be restrained. However, Wei Fenghua still emphasized that it is better to be refined than to be greedy. Based on this, Luo Yan's idea is to find a set of advanced skills within the Black Witch as his side job, to cover up the identity of Red Ghost. This set of skills does not need to be very strong, but it must have a strong personal color, so that people can easily associate it with the identity of Red Ghost. In the subsequent cultivation, the Yan Yang Jing is still the main one. The Black Witch's skills can be cultivated to as many levels as possible. As long as the Jinkui Lu is obtained, or the Black Witch's skills are cultivated to the Tongzuan realm before the red poison attacks the heart, then the Black Witch's skills can be practiced, and the identity of Red Ghost can be lost. Thinking of this, Luo Yan had a clear choice in choosing skills. Finally, he took a fancy to a skill, Hua Zujing. After practicing this skill, when attacking and killing the opponent, you can absorb the opponent's blood and ki. After refining, it forms blood essence. The blood and ki of different lives such as humans, beasts, insects, fish, birds, etc. form different blood essences. As for humans, because of the different cultivation methods, blood essence is also differentiated. After refining and forming blood essence, it can be driven and used, or to heal or kill enemies, or to produce various temporary special effects, etc. It has a wide range of applications and a strong personal color. The only problem is that this thing requires 2000 contribution points. Now, Luo Yan only has about 1200 contribution points in the Black Witch. I need to take on more missions. Or I can get enough contribution points by taking down the Coyote base and killing the core member of the Yellow Springs organization named Jiuying. While Luo Yan was calculating, Guanpeng came. He put away his phone and looked at Guanpeng. On the night of the third day of the Chinese New Year, the old city was decorated with lights and red lanterns were hung everywhere. The air still smelled of gunpowder after the firecrackers. The ground was red, which was all the paper scraps after the firecrackers were set off. According to tradition, these paper scraps symbolize a prosperous new year, so they will not be cleaned up until a few days later. In front of a small shop selling paper umbrellas, there were also red paper scraps. The sign of the A Fei paper umbrella shop had some poor contact, and the word Fei inside could not light up. The shop was open, and when Luo Yan and Guanpeng arrived, a woman came out with a suitcase. Chapter 424, Determined to Win. The woman who came out of the paper umbrella shop was in her early 30s, and dressed in fancy clothes. Although she was not young, she was charming. However, although they were both charming, Banji, a teacher at Qingyang City College, was charming in her bones, while the woman in front of her was charming on the surface. When the two were compared, there was a world of difference. In the shop, a figure chased after her and grabbed the woman's hand. "Zio Lei, please don't leave, okay?" The figure was a man, about 40 years old, a little thin, wearing glasses. At first glance he looked a bit like Zioshi, but his cheeks were thin, and he looked a bit malnourished. Guanpeng whispered to Luo Yan, "That's the mecha teacher I told you about, Mr. Chenefei." As Guanpeng was about to step forward, he was stopped by Luo Yan. Luo Yan whispered, "It's not convenient now, let's talk about it later." He and Guanpeng walked into the shadow of the building in the corner and looked at the shop silently. The enchanting woman named Ziyali shook off Chenefei's hand. "Chenefei, I was so blind before that I fell in love with a loser like you. I gave you my best years. What have you given me? You said you gave up a good job as a teacher in the Mecha Academy and learned other people's business. As a result, now you are running a shabby paper umbrella shop. How do you support me? Tell me." Chenefei smiled and said, "Didn't you say at the time that being a teacher only made a few dollars? I thought so too, so I quit my job as a teacher and came out to learn how to run a business. Don't underestimate this paper umbrella. The method of tying paper umbrellas has been lost now. It is an intangible cultural heritage. As long as I promote it vigorously, our store's business will definitely take off." Ziyali pointed at Chenefei's nose. "What do you mean? Are you saying that it was me who caused you to lose your job as a teacher? Okay, Chenefei, are there any men like you? You blame women for your own incompetence." Chenefei waved his hand. "I didn't say that, Ziyali. It's New Year's Day. Let's talk it out, okay?" "Bullshit." Someone shouted. "Ziyali is so unlucky to be with a loser like you. Now she's with me. She'll have a good life in the future. I advise you not to be ungrateful." Several figures walked in the street. The one who was talking. He was the tall, sloppy looking man walking in front, with a cigarette in his mouth. He was wearing gold and silver, as if he was afraid that others didn't know he was rich. Behind him followed several people, tall and strong, like bodyguards. Chen Ashen's face suddenly fell, and he pointed at the man and said, "Lu Sheng, you dare to come here?" Back then, you were so poor that you had to beg for food. If I hadn't taken you in, would you be alive today? It's okay if you don't know how to repay your gratitude, but you still. The man named Lu Sheng laughed. What did I still do? Did I still seduce your wife? No, it was Xiali who seduced me. I can't help it. Who made me live a good life. She told me more than once that, if you move on her for 3 seconds, you will feel like flying. Ha 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 ha. Chen Asheng's eyes suddenly spit fire, and he rushed back to the store. When he ran out again, he had a pair of scissors in his hand. He shouted and stabbed Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng was startled, dodged to the side, and then shouted, "Beat him." In the corner, Guan Peng wanted to help, but was stopped by Luo Yan. Luo Yan whispered, "It's more uncomfortable to help him now than to kill him." Guan Peng was stunned for a moment, then nodded and thought it made sense. After a round of punching and kicking, Lu Sheng, who was afraid to kill him, panted and pulled the woman away. In a remote street, Chen Fei was lying on the ground covered with red paper, with blood on his scalp. His eyes were empty. After a while, he got up and walked back to the store step by step. Guan Peng glanced at Luo Yan, who turned away. "Let's go. It's not appropriate to disturb him today." Luo Yan then said, "Let someone keep an eye on Lu Sheng and his men." Guan Peng looked at the paper umbrella shop behind and nodded. On the 4th day of the new year, snow was flying. On the surface, the ground was covered with silver macupe, and the world was bleak. The cold wind whistled, and when it blew on the face, it would leave a thin layer of white frost. But Luo Yan was in the car, wearing a mask, so he was not cold. Several cars were heading to the coyote camp. Li Yu sent a message last night, saying that at noon on the 6th day of the new year, Chu Yuan from Huangquan would come to the camp to inquire about the last arms sale. So Luo Yan brought Wei Junai, the old members of Team 7, and the troops of the Iron Horse. They formed a team and went to the Xiaolang camp to ambush and kill Chu Yuan. He had reported this matter to the Black Witch and got approval. After the success, he could get 1000 contribution points and other rewards. Other rewards were fine. Luo Yan was determined to get the 1000 contribution points. With this contribution point, he could exchange for the blood transformation sutra. The next afternoon, Luo Yan saw the coyote camp. After Cheng Beizhen died, the camp was managed by Li Yu. From a distance, Luo Yan saw that many sentries were added around the camp, and the number of soldiers patrolling with guns also increased significantly. It can be seen that Li Yu was dedicated to running this camp. Because they knew in advance that Luo Yan and others were coming, they entered the camp as soon as the convoy arrived. When passing a square, Luo Yan saw dozens of people in the snow, bare-chested, carrying guns and doing frog jumps. Next to them, a short-haired woman was smoking and supervising them. If anyone did not do well, she would walk over and kick them in the butt. Arriving at the shopping mall building, where Cheng Beizhen used to be, Luo Yan got out of the car and looked up to see that many windows on the top of the building were sealed with cement, leaving only small windows or exhaust vents for ventilation. The windows on the 2 lower floors were welded with metal covers, leaving windows for observation and shooting. After the transformation, the building lost its life atmosphere, but became easier to defend and harder to attack. Moreover, Luo Yan found snipers in several hidden places, which made him more confident in Li Yu's ability. At this time, the armored door of the building opened, and Li Yu, wearing winter clothes to keep warm, came out with several capable men. When he saw Luo Yan, he shouted, "Happy New Year, Mr. Chigi." Luo Yan chuckled in his mask, "Happy New Year." Then, he walked into the warm building with Li Yu. Li Yu immediately reported, "I have temporarily stabilized Huangquan's people," and Chu Yuan also sent a message yesterday afternoon, saying that he will arrive tomorrow. I used words to find out their driving route. Mr. Chigi, do you think we should take action on the road? Luo Yan shook his head. The route may not be true, and it may be temporarily changed, but he will definitely come to the camp, so we should follow the original plan and take action in the camp. Luo Yan glanced at him again. "What level are you at now?" Li Yu said with some shame. "I was promoted to the 3rd level not long ago." Luo Yan raised his hand, and Wei Junai behind him handed him a briefcase. Luo Yan handed the briefcase to Liu. There are some potions in it that can help with cultivation as a reward for your hard work during this period of time. You can use it yourself, or you can distribute it freely. After the ambush is completed, I will have another reward. Liu's eyes brightened when he heard it. Chapter 425, Operation Termination. On the 6th day of the first lunar month, a convoy was driving in the snowy wilderness. The road was full of snow, but in front of the convoy, there was a snowplow, which used a special device to shovel snow, while crushing the snow piles, and spraying them out through the discharge devices on both sides. In this way, the snow powder was piled on both sides of the road without blocking the vehicles behind. The vehicles behind were basically tracked vehicles, which were not afraid of slipping when driving in the wilderness, and they were not troubled by the rough road surface. This convoy had 50 elite warriors, and every 10 warriors were led by a cultivator of the primary second level. Huangquan Jiuying, a strong man of the advanced level, was their leader. In addition, there were 4 intermediate level warriors to assist. Together with other types of personnel, this convoy had more than 70 people. The convoy was driving on a high slope. After climbing the hillside, it was the coyote camp. The arrival of the Huangquan personnel was half a day earlier than the information provided by Jiuying. Moreover, the route they came was definitely not the one provided by Jiuying. This is Jiuying's style, and also the basic quality of survival in the wilderness, not letting others know or guess your whereabouts. In a warm and comfortable chariot, Jiuying looked at a tablet computer, which contained the message replied by Liu. He put down the tablet computer. There is something strange. In the front seat, a man with thick eyebrows and big eyes who was wiping a dagger raised his head. Mr. Chu, what's strange? His name is Yang Jiaxi, one of Jiuying's confidants, a mid-level second-level combat force, and a black rope-level member of the Huangquan organization. Jiuying's eyes were deep. Since I left last time, the people who contacted me were Liu, Chengbeizen's confidant. Yang Jiaxi thought for a moment and smiled. Could it be that this Li has replaced Chengbeizen? Jiuying glanced at the tablet. It's possible. But what I'm more worried about is that the camp may have been controlled by the Black Wizard, and Liu is just a chess piece on the table. Yang Jiaxi touched his wide chin. It's possible. The last time Liu replied, didn't he say that the Black Wizard appeared and 15 went out of the camp to fight, and then there was no news from both sides? He also said that he sent people outside the camp to look for 15's whereabouts, but because of the cold weather, their equipment was limited, and the search range was only near the camp, so it ended in vain. Plus, the Cheng man didn't show up again. It is very likely that it is true as you think, Mr. Chu, that the coyote has changed its owner. This is a trap. Jiuying glanced out the window indifferently. Whether it is a trap or not, we will know after trying it. Notified Ongxin and let him prepare. Yang Jiaxi stood up and left the carriage. Coyote camp. Luo Yan was wearing the uniform of a soldier in the camp, with a helmet and a mask, revealing only a pair of red eyes. He stood beside Liu and acted as Liu's confidant. Just now, Liu received news that the people from Huangquan had arrived. Liu led the crowd to welcome them, and Luo Yan disguised himself as his subordinate, ready to act when the opportunity arose. Others, Wei Junai and Guanpeng, etc., took their subordinates and scattered into various parts of the camp to ambush. A moment later, Luo Yan could already see a convoy coming to the camp in the wind and snow. Here they come, Liu said softly. Luo Yan glanced at him and thought that this person was rare. Now that the people from Huangquan were about to arrive, he was not panicked at all. This kind of psychological quality can be entrusted with important tasks. Squeak. In front of the building, a soldier opened the door and let the convoy of Huangquan in. They had a large number of people, and only 3 chariots came to the open space in front of the building. The other vehicles were parked outside. At this time, the car door opened, and figures appeared one after another. A moment later, Luo Yan heard Liu whisper, the one wearing a black coat is Jiuying. Luo Yan looked over and saw that Jiuying, who Liu was talking about, was tall and wore a black double-breasted long coat with a fur collar. He had a blank expression and a cold look. He narrowed his eyes slightly and activated the Wuang blasting eyes calmly. When Luo Yan looked at Jiuying again, some information emerged. Jiuying Dancin, 28 years old, a member of the Black Rope level of the Huanquan organization. It's not Jiuying. It's his stand-in. Luo Yan immediately whispered in his helmet. Action terminated. Jiuying didn't come. It was his stand-in. This voice also sounded in Liyu's headphones. Liyu was shocked and knew that Jiuying was suspicious. Otherwise he would not have sent a stand-in to the camp. This was obviously a test. He walked forward calmly, stretched out his hand and said, "You came really early, Mr. Jiuying. You've worked hard on the road." While Liyu was receiving the stand-in, Luo Yan also discovered an interesting phenomenon. The stand-in named Jiuying Dancin. In his Wuwang burning eyes, the opponent's biological grey light is covered with a layer of light red light film. That light film seems to be able to be ignited. It seems that Wuwang burning eyes is not limited to burning illusions, but can burn anything. That includes the concept of deception. Luo Yan restrained the urge to try to ignite the light film. He did not want to alert the enemy. At this moment, due to the change in the script, Liyu can only play freely. When he invited Jiuying to enter the building, Jiuying's stand-in asked, "Why don't you see Mr. Cheng?" Liyu's eyes dimmed, thinking of his elder brother who lost his life because of a woman. His eyes were filled with some sadness from the heart. To be honest, after Mr. 15 disappeared, my elder brother died of an illness. Before he left, he told me to keep his death a secret and to do the job that Mr. Jiuying had assigned me. Jiuying said, "Why?" My elder brother said that if Mr. Chun knew that he was dead, it would be hard for him to trust me and he would change his agent. Liyu shook his head and sighed, so he told me to keep his news secret. He said that as long as I performed well during this period, Mr. Jiuying would naturally look up to me when you came. So during this period, I was the one replying to Mr. Jiuying's messages. Please forgive me, Mr. Chu. Jiuying said, "I see," and then looked around. "Why don't you see Ms. Xiaoli?" Liyu's eyes were filled with murderous intent again. "Don't mention this woman. This woman is fickle. Not long after my elder brother left, she got together with another man. I caught her having sex with someone in my elder brother's morning hall, and I was so angry that I killed her on the spot." Luo Yan thought to himself. This Liyu is very clever. He coaxed and deceived me, and I almost believed him. The most important thing is that no matter the sadness before or the murderous intent at this moment, there is no artificiality at all. Otherwise, it would be difficult to deceive people. At this time, outside the coyote camp, in a chariot, Jiuying looked at Liyu's expression on the screen and listened to his words. For a moment, it was difficult to distinguish the truth from the false. He could only continue to observe. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 426, Trap. Coyote Camp. On his way to the high-level reception hall, Luo Yan left quietly without attracting anyone's attention. He walked to the garage, but came out of the garage without driving any vehicle. He appeared in the snow, just like the ordinary soldiers of the nearby camp passing by. Luo Yan whispered, "You keep your troops in place. Once the people of Huanquan show abnormalities, you should take action. Junai, the timing of the action is up to you to judge. Lao Guan, you listen to Junai's arrangements for the time being." Soon, Wei Junai and Guan Peng's responses rang out in his headphones. At this time, a camp patrol car happened to pass by, and Luo Yan jumped on it and sat in the car to patrol the camp. Taking this opportunity, he used the Wuwang burning eyes to observe the Huanquan members who stayed in the camp. However, Jiuying was not among these people. Did Jiuying not come? Impossible. Since he used a substitute, it means that he has become suspicious of the camp. Since he is suspicious, how can he let others handle this matter? If I were Jiuying, what would I do? Suddenly, Luo Yan looked outside the camp calmly. Behind the hillside about 1 kilometer away from the camp, a temporary campsite has been set up at the place where Jiuying was in the chariot. Jiuying was in the chariot, and through the instrument on his stand in Jiuying Dancin, he could remotely grasp what was happening in the camp. While he was planning in the chariot, the warriors wearing silver cloaks and white armor, which were difficult to detect in the snow, were patrolling nearby. In addition to Jiuying, this small camp also has a mid-level black rope elite and a team led by a waiting for life member. In addition to the cooks and servants, there are a total of more than 20 people. At this time, the cooks and servants were preparing food for Jiuying and the people in the camp. In order to prevent the giant beasts from being attracted, or the coyote camp from being disturbed, they used electric ovens and other tools to cook, so as not to expose their location with cooking smoke. It's so cold. Outside the camp, a white armored warrior held his hands and exhaled, then cleaned the white frost on his face, and then pulled up the mask, and looked towards the camp. I really envy other teams. They can go to the camp, which is much warmer than ours. If you have better luck, there may be women, to warm your bed at night. His companion next to him laughed and scolded. Can you be a little more ambitious? How can I not have ambitions? Before the giant beast disaster, I also had great ambitions. Now, it's good to be alive. Then you can think about the good side. The disaster has come, and you don't have to pay the mortgage for decades. Haha. The two were chatting, and suddenly the snow pile in front of them shook, and snowballs fell down. The two soldiers immediately looked alert. They made gestures, and then went to the snow pile from the left and right. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly rushed out of the snow pile, and it swept through the snow at a very fast speed. The two soldiers took a closer look, and found that it was a giant beast parasite. It is not known whether the insect went into hibernation due to the cold weather, but now it is awakened for some unknown reason. Moreover, snow piles were constantly moving in the snowy ground around them, and then 7 or 8 parasites appeared from different positions and headed towards a forest in the snowy ground in the distance. Quick, go inform the captain. A moment later, it was not their waiting for life level captain who came, but a black rope level elite. This trusted general of Jiuying was no longer young, in his early 40s, with mottled hair and obvious wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, but with a dignified face. What's going on? The waiting for life level captain followed and said, tell me everything you saw. So the two soldiers reported the appearance of the parasites just now. The black rope elite looked at the forest in the distance, and said in a deep voice, you guys come with me to take a look. It would be troublesome if there is a giant beast nearby. Soon, the team went deep into the forest and, led by the black rope elite, soon made a discovery. There was a strong smell of blood in the air, and under a big tree not far away, there was a person hanging. He shrugged his head, and a branch as thick as his arm pierced his chest. The branch was frozen as hard as an iron rod, and it easily supported the body. But this is not the most important thing. The important thing is that the man was wearing white armor and a silver cape, and he was obviously a soldier in the camp. He died here silently. The blood flowing from the fatal wound on his chest had frozen into ice, but it still exuded a bloody smell, attracting the hibernating giant beasts and parasites nearby. Seeing this scene, the black rope elite suddenly shouted, it's a trap, send a signal, and return to the camp. The waiting for life level captain quickly took out the signal gun, but before he could send out the signal, his eyes suddenly bulged, and the signal gun fell to the ground. He covered his neck with his hands, as if he couldn't breathe. The black rope elite turned around, but saw that the people he brought, including the team leader, were all having difficulty breathing, and blood was coming out of the corners of their eyes. He took a breath of cold air in the mask, thinking that this was like poisoning. The black rope elite quickly reached for the field medical kit that he carried with him, which contained a neutralizer developed for most toxins. But as soon as he stretched out his hand, he felt shortness of breath and itchy body, which made him want to scratch. He suddenly opened his eyes wide. This symptom was very familiar to him. This was a toxin developed by their Yellow Spring organization. It was highly toxic, and had symptoms such as suffocation, internal bleeding, and itchy skin. If it was not detoxified in time, it would soon be poisoned and killed. The black rope elite quickly used his UN force, but this toxin would affect the operation of UN force. After all, the main purpose of research and development was to kill those who practiced visualization. This elite had also used this poison to plot against many opponents, but now that he had become the target of poisoning, he was not so happy. While he was fighting the toxin, he went to get the antidote, and at this moment, an invisible ripple, emitting a burning fire, flashed across his neck in an instant. If it was normal, as a black rope level elite, even if he could not deal with this ripple, he could at least avoid it. But now, he was poisoned, and his reaction became slow. He didn't notice the ripple until it appeared, but it was too late. The ripple broke through the air, and tore the drifting snowflakes in half. Then the snowflakes melted in the heat, and dispersed into wisps of water vapor. The eyes of the black rope elite were wide open, and then a large amount of blood spurted out of his neck and he fell on his back. At this time, the parasites attracted by the blood woke up from hibernation, emerged from the snow, and quickly gathered around these corpses, devouring these fresh foods. Chapter 427, Poisoning. A strong wind blew, rolling up a handful of snow powder, and sprinkled it towards the camp. The goggles of a soldier standing on the slope looking out were suddenly full of snowflakes. He hurriedly cleaned them up, and at this moment, a figure passed by him, and entered the camp. The figure was also wearing a silver white cloak, white armor, a helmet, goggles and a mask, covering his whole body tightly. After finally cleaning the snow off the goggles, the soldier looked towards the woods in the distance. I don't know what happened over there. They've been gone for a while, and they haven't come back yet. Did they go to clean up the parasites? The soldier shrank his neck. It's really a good place. I don't know if there are parasites near the camp. What do those guys do for a living? His words drifted into Luo Yan's ears with the wind. Yes. The white armored soldier who just entered the camp was Luo Yan. After failing to find Jiuying in the coyote camp, Luo Yan left the camp. He used the opening ghost wheel to gather his breath, and searched outwards in circles with the coyote camp as the center. Finally, with the help of the Wuwang burning eyes, he found a group of grey-light of humanoid creatures behind a high slope. He touched the vicinity, and found that Jiuying was in a chariot. Luo Yan did not act rashly. While discovering these people, he also found that there were hibernating parasites in the surrounding camps. So Luo Yan made a plan. He first took away a lone warrior, and nailed him to death in the woods, using the warrior's blood to attract parasites. The appearance of parasites naturally attracted the attention of the camp, but a few parasites did not need to alarm Jiuying. So as Luo Yan expected, a team went deep into the woods. At that time, he ambushed in the woods, and used the toxin essence stored in the dragon transformation posture, to poison the people who chased into the woods. Finally, he used a knife to cut the throat of the black rope elite. After knocking down these people, Luo Yan took the equipment of one of the soldiers, disguised himself, and then disguised himself as a soldier in the camp and sneaked in. Now he had to consider how to approach Jiuying without being discovered, so that he could poison Jiuying in the carriage. After thinking about it, Luo Yan planned to release the poison in another way. Considering that Jiuying was a strong man in the advanced realm, injecting the essence of the poison directly into his body might be discovered by him. Therefore, Luo Yan planned to release the poison in the carriage. Let Jiuying inhale the air containing the poison without knowing it. The carriage is sealed, and even if there is exhaust, the airflow in the car is far less than that outside. This creates favorable conditions for releasing the poison. At this moment, Luo Yan walked towards the chariot in a low profile. In the chariot, Jiuying looked at the screen in front of him expressionlessly. Inside, through the camera on the stand-in, he witnessed the whole process of Liu receiving himself. During the whole process, Liu did not show any abnormality, and even invited himself to visit the camps that bought arms in the afternoon. Am I overthinking? Jiuying picked up the glass of wine next to him, and took a sip. He was concentrating on watching the screen, and didn't notice that something else was quietly added to the air. Under a tree 50 meters away from the chariot, Luo Yan stood with a gun in his arms, looking like a soldier in the camp on guard. In fact, he released several lambolite gases, letting them penetrate into the chariot, where Jiuying was like tentacles, and released a little bit of toxin essence. Once these toxins were released into the air, they immediately dispersed and turned into countless particles that were invisible to the naked eye, floating and permeating in the air. Not long after, the carriage was filled with colorless and odorless poisonous gas, and it entered Jiuying's body with every breath. Under the vision of Wu Wang's and Iron, Luo Yan saw that Jiuying's biological grey light began to have a little more dark fluorescent light. They were like fireflies in the dark night, gradually penetrating into Jiuying's biological grey light. After a while, Jiuying's blood value began to change. That value is decreasing. In the chariot, Jiuying suddenly felt an itch in his throat and coughed lightly, but he didn't care. It's normal to cough occasionally in the dry winter weather. At this time, he looked at the tablet computer next to him, which showed that the signal of his confidant appeared outside the camp. Jiuying picked up the intercom next to him. Why did Liu Zheng leave the camp? Someone soon reported on the intercom. Parasitic activities were found outside the camp just now, and Mr. Zheng took people to investigate. Parasites? Jiuying frowned slightly. How long have you been gone? A quarter of an hour. A quarter of an hour. Jiuying immediately stood up, sent someone to check it out immediately. After speaking, he put down the intercom. Hasn't come back in a quarter of an hour. Something's wrong. If it's just parasites, if there are not many, a quarter of an hour is enough for Liu Zheng to clean it up and go back and forth. If there are too many, Liu Zheng should notify me. Jiuying looked at the screen in front of him suddenly. On the screen, Liu was still calm and talking and laughing. Outside the chariot, in the camp, after releasing the toxin, Luo Yan came to an armored vehicle. The door of the vehicle was open and no one was inside. Luo Yan got in, closed the door, and then found a good thing in the vehicle, a shoulder-fired rocket launcher. At this time, in the Wuang Zuan, Luo Yan saw Jiuying's thoughts. Could it be that Liu is a cover? Looking at Jiuying's biological grey light again, those dark green fluorescent lights have penetrated a lot, and basically, Jiuying's biological grey light is surrounded by green fluorescent lights. Not only has he been poisoned, but the toxin has initially affected his body and is infiltrating his internal organs. In the tank, Jiuying coughed again, coughing up a few drops of saliva, which were a little dark red. His pupils suddenly dilated, and a thought came to his mind. Am I poisoned? Jiuying quickly reached out to grab a medical box placed next to him, which contained an antidote. At this time, he heard a deep roar outside the car. Jiuying cried out inwardly, oh no. Then he flew up and felt a violent vibration. The tank's compartment was spinning, and at the same time the walls were deformed. All the windows were shattered, and flames were spraying in from outside the car. In the camp, everyone opened their mouths wide. They saw a soldier carrying a rocket launcher on an armored vehicle in the distance, and the tank where their commander, Jiuying, was located, exploded violently, and the body of the car rolled over. It was unknown whether the people inside were dead or alive. What's going on? Who is that person? Don't worry about it, take him down. Just when the remaining soldiers in the camp were about to take action, the overturned tank's door suddenly shot up into the sky, and then a figure with fire and smoke on his body rushed out of the car, then quickly rushed out of the camp and left. Chapter 428, Fight. With the Wuang Zuan activated, Luo Yan kept an eye on Jiuying's thoughts. When he saw that he found out that he was poisoned, he did not hesitate and came to the car with a rocket launcher and fired at Jiuying's chariot. Seeing that Jiuying was not dead, Luo Yan was not surprised. After all, he was not directly hit by the shell. Besides, if a Zhang-level backbone did not have any ability to save his life, it would be embarrassing to tell others. When he saw Jiuying running away, Luo Yan also admired his decisiveness. Although he admired him, his reaction was not slow. He threw the rocket launcher and activated the secret method Fenglian. At that moment, riding on a cold wind that just blew from behind, Luo Yan slid through the camp like a silver goshawk and chased Jiuying. Jiuying looked embarrassed. Although he did not die in the explosion just now, he was injured after all. In addition, he was poisoned and had no time to treat it. Now he was suffering from internal and external troubles. The reason why he escaped from the camp was because he judged that his confidant might have died outside the woods. Otherwise, why would he leave and not come back for a quarter of an hour? Since the other party could do this, he must be a master. Now that he was poisoned and had internal injuries, if he stayed in the camp, he would be in danger of death. If he escaped from the camp, he could finally get rid of the other party so that he would have time to heal his wounds and detoxify. In addition, once he left, the men in the camp would definitely notify Yang Jiaxi and Jiuo Dongxin. With these capable men coming to rescue him, his chances of survival would be greater. But to Chu Yuan's surprise, he had just rushed out of the camp not far when he heard the sound of wind behind him, and then a shadow on the snow passed over his head. Chu Yuan looked up and saw a figure dressed as a camp soldier falling on the snow in front of him. He turned around suddenly, raised his long sword, and emitted an invisible ripple, with the heat of the scorching sun breaking through the air. Sword key. Chu Yuan was shocked, but still calm. He circulated his Yuan power and raised his hand to blast. A phantom black flame suddenly blasted out from the tip of his fist, emitting a faint evil spirit, and collided with the opponent's sword key. The ripples collapsed and dissipated, but Chu Yuan's black fire also separated from both sides, and a splash of blood appeared on the tip of his fist. It was obvious that he was not able to completely break the sword energy, and was still injured. Chu Yuan was stunned for a moment, then his eyes turned cold, and he shouted loudly, trying his best to mobilize his energy, but this made the poison in his body attack faster. But there was nothing he could do. Just now, Chu Yuan's punch had already tested that the opponent's combat power was not inferior to his. He was also a strong man in the advanced realm. If he was still unwilling to fight desperately, he would only die faster. His experience in the Huanquan organization and his long-term experience of being active on the surface made Chu Yuan know that he should cherish his life when he should, but he must not shrink back when he should fight desperately. Under the urging of energy, lotus flowers appeared around Chu Yuan. Those lotus flowers swayed slightly in the cold wind and then burned with black flames one by one. Some of these black fire lotus flowers became stronger, while others closed together to form twin lotus flowers. As these lotus flowers emerged, Chu Yuan's momentum rose sharply, and his hand swung rapidly and continuously, sending out a lotus flower with each punch. Those lotuses swayed and floated towards Luo Yan, which was very strange. Luo Yan did not dare to be careless, and the long sword Huan Lang in his hand continuously emitted sword energy. At this time, Luo Yan had already started to practice the Yan Yang Sutra. As his Yuan Li rose, the light was bright and golden, and the heat rose, just like the light of the sun. But he had just practiced the first level of the technique, and even the halo had not formed, so he did not show any strange phenomena like Chu Yuan. Even so, the sword energy in his hand at this time was stronger, longer, and had high heat. Every invisible ripple that passed through the air evaporated the snow powder around into water vapor, and caused smoke to rise around. Chu Yuan's black fire demon lotus was printed one by one, and was continuously broken by the sword energy, causing black flames to splash. When those illusory black flames fell into the snow, the white snow did not melt, but suddenly turned black, and then turned into ashes, and disappeared with the wind. In the blink of an eye, Chu Yuan had already hit hundreds of punches, but still failed to force Luo Yan away, and suddenly felt anxious. He snorted, and suppressed his irritable mood. He suddenly changed his fist into a palm, put his palms together, and pushed towards Luo Yan. Suddenly, black flames burst out, turning into a lotus with two stems, swaying and blasting towards Luo Yan. Luo Yan's red eyes and the goggles flashed a smile, and suddenly he was like a dragonfly touching the water, and his figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. Footwork, dragonfly touching the water. Chu Yuan had seen Luo Yan fight with him for hundreds of punches before, but he didn't expect that Luo Yan would not resist this time. All of a sudden, his black flame lotus with two stems blasted into the air, and the lotus swayed slightly, and a black fire wave suddenly exploded. The fire wave sprayed into a fan shape, turning the snow and grass in that area into ashes. Luo Yan flashed to the other side, and suddenly blood appeared out of thin air, and the red light gathered and concentrated on him, making Luo Yan look like a blood-soaked Shura. Murderous. Secret method, blood Shura. After using the secret method, Luo Yan swung his sword again, and released a knife aura. The knife aura was not only scorching, but also carried the power of blood evil. A blood red wave condensed into a knife shape, and slashed towards Chu Yuan. Chu Yuan's intuition from a master allowed him to avoid the sharp edge in time, but the knife aura still slashed across his shoulder, and his skin and flesh were immediately torn apart. He immediately used his power to close the wound, but found that there was a strange energy residue in the wound, making it difficult for his wound to close, causing the bleeding to continue. Jiuying took a breath of cold air. He was poisoned, injured, and now bleeding. How to fight? At the same time, he understood Liu Yan's tactics. The opponent clearly did not want to fight with him, but planned to delay time until he could no longer suppress the poison in his body. By then, the poison would take effect, and even if he did not die on the spot, he would die under his knife. Even if it was a delayed fight, Liu Yan was very dangerous. After using the blood-surer secret method, once he was injured by his knife aura, it would be difficult to close the wound. Of course, Jiuying was not helpless. He slapped the wound on his shoulder, and the black fire under his palm burned the wound, which sealed the blood vessels and stopped bleeding. However, this method is self-mutilation, and the price paid is only slightly lighter than the loss of blood. But at this time, Jiuying looked at Liu Yan's knife. After the successful attack, Liu Yan did not stop. Just as Jiuying thought, Liu Yan planned to delay time and let Jiuying die of poison. He did not forget that he and the other two were not far from the camp, so when a soldier rushed out of the camp, Liu Yan backhanded a knife, sweeping out a bloody ripple, killing the soldier who chased out of the camp. But at this time, Jiuying took the opportunity to take out a syringe from his body and finally found a chance to give himself an injection. This injection is not an antidote, but a compound functional medicine, which has the functions of boosting vitality, relieving injuries, neutralizing toxins, and has some stimulant functions. After the injection, Jiuying's pain was reduced immediately. Then he shouted loudly, changed his palm into a claw, and grabbed the ring dragon in Liu Yan's hand. This time, no black flame demon lotus appeared, but a black flame giant claw stretched out from the air, grabbed the long sword, and lifted it up violently. Liu Yan's mouth was numb, and he couldn't hold the long sword firmly, and the ring dragon was caught by the flame claw. Jiuying's mouth slightly raised. He gave himself an injection just now, not to have strength to escape. Instead, he wanted to create a chance to win and kill this powerful enemy on the spot. Now, he saw Liu Yan's long sword slip out of his hand, and thought to himself that the opportunity had come. Chapter 429 Shattered Mountains and Rivers. At this time, Jiuying suddenly saw that the expert who was disguised as a camp soldier, his red eyes and the goggles suddenly lit up with sharp divine light. The other part his eyes were like a sharp sword, as if to cut his body and soul into pieces, which made Jiuying's eyes suddenly hurt. He took a deep breath and suddenly urged his energy to make more and more black fire demon lotuses swaying around. The next second, all the lotuses suddenly shook violently, and the petals broke into pieces, turning into millions of pieces. Jiuying used some secret method to increase his momentum by 3 points, and then he punched out. The thousands of fragments surrounding him suddenly rolled towards Liu Yan with a crash. These fragments turned into a sea, and the huge waves of the Sea of Flowers fell, raising a wave, and surging towards Liu Yan. Jiuying saw that the expert retreated again and again. His figure flickered, as if he wanted to get out of the range of the Sea of Flowers. Jiuying sneered. This test combat skill, with the cooperation of his secret method, was as powerful as the ultimate skill. How could it be so easy to dodge? He changed his fist into a palm, spread out his 5 fingers, palms facing down, and pressed down hard. Immediately, the entire Sea of Flowers was suppressed, and countless black fire fragments swept the opponent frantically. The seemingly tender fragments cut the armor as soon as they passed Liu Yan's body. Then they expanded and exploded, forming a small explosion. There were so many fragments in the Sea of Flowers, and immediately, there were continuous explosions in the sea. The next second, the flames released by the explosion gathered together and turned into a black column of fire that rose to the sky like a volcanic eruption. Jiuying could see clearly that after the master lost his sword, his bones and blood melted in the column of fire, and in a blink of an eye, only a black skeleton was left. He sneered. He thought that this guy finally died under his killer. What are you happy about? A voice sounded behind him. Jiuying took a breath and turned around suddenly. He saw that the master was standing behind him intact, standing in the snow, as if everything that happened just now was a dream. Impossible. Jiuying was not panicked and immediately urged his Yuan force again. As usual, another sea of flowers suppressed it. In a flash, the master disappeared in the sea of flowers again. Is he going to die now? Jiuying panted slightly. He was already tired after using 2 killing moves in a row. The toxicity of the injury suppressed by the medicine was about to start. Who do you say should die? A cold voice sounded behind him. Jiuying's whole body froze, and he turned around in disbelief. He saw Luo Yan standing there unharmed. How is it possible? What did you do to me? Jiuying gritted his teeth and used his killing move again. Black flames roared, and flowers and leaves flew, drowning Luo Yan for the 3rd time. What to do? Nothing, just to make you fall into hell. But, your organization calls itself Huangquan, so you should be familiar with hell, right? It was this voice again. Exclamation mark. It was this damn voice again. Jiuying turned around, and this time he saw not one Luo Yan, but countless of them, as if he could never kill them all, and he could never kill them all. Exclamation mark. Ah. In the camp, the cooks and servants all hid, and suddenly heard Jiuying's desperate voice outside. They looked at each other. In their impression, only Jiuying's enemies would make such a wail. It was the first time they heard such a voice from Jiuying. So the high and mighty adult would also despair? At this time, someone boldly stretched his neck to look outside the camp. Jiuying was seen punching everywhere frantically, causing black flames to burst out continuously in the snow outside the camp. Large areas of snow turned into scorched land, but Jiuying's attack became weaker and weaker. After not knowing how many punches he had thrown, he suddenly shook his whole body and then sprayed out a large amount of black blood foam. Outside the camp, watching Jiuying spray out black blood, Luo Yan whispered in the mask, "The poison has taken effect just now." Although Jiuying took away his knife, he was also hit by Luo Yan's unique skills. Eyes cut off. This attack on the spiritual level immediately made Jiuying fall into the hell in his heart. In this hell, facing the unkillable opponent, his spirit was finally crushed and cut off. Now, the injuries and toxins that had been suppressed by Jiuying also erupted, bringing this Zhang-level backbone to the brink of death. Even so, Luo Yan was still not careless. The secret method switched from blood Shura to KO and wheel. The Yuanli immediately boiled, like a volcanic eruption. After practicing Yan Yangjing, even if it was just an introduction, Luo Yan's Yuanli also changed. From the previous bright yellow luster, it turned into the current golden light, brilliant and dazzling, like the sun at noon. At the same time, it exuded amazing fire, set off a high temperature heat wave, rolled up countless ashes, and made it look like a black snow outside the camp. At this time, the momentum and pressure released by Luo Yan shocked everyone in the camp. Even though they were just ordinary people, they also felt Luo Yan's extraordinariness. Because when they looked at Luo Yan's Yuanli light, their eyes were stinging, as if they were pierced by thousands of needles, and their eyes were red and tears were pouring down. As the main target of Luo Yan's murderous intent, Jiuying felt it even more deeply. He finally woke up from the dying state, and when he turned his head, he saw a fist expanding in his field of vision. In the end, it occupied his entire field of vision. It seemed that Luo Yan had hit him with a close-range punch, but in fact, Luo Yan was still keeping a certain distance from him. That punch was also thrown from a distance, but Jiuying was affected by Luo Yan's imposing pressure, and his mind was trembling, so he felt this way. After seemingly throwing the punch lightly, Luo Yan turned around, without looking at Jiuying again, and turned to walk towards the camp. Behind him, Jiuying and even the surrounding space, colorful lights appeared one after another. These gorgeous and dazzling lights were like cracks, distributed in the air, and continued to spread forward, passing through Jiuying's body, and spreading to the mountains and forests 1,000 meters behind. After a moment, the atmosphere shook, making a loud sound like thunder. Then, the fragments separated by those colorful light bands, the scenes and things in them all vibrated, and the frequency suddenly increased. Suddenly, whether it was Jiuying, the scorched earth, the rocks, the snow piles in the distance, or the old trees, they were all blurred and doubled. But, with a roar, starting from Jiuying, his body first deformed, and then the sound of bones breaking rang out in his body. His body was like a piece of porcelain that fell to the ground, full of cracks, and then the flesh and blood collapsed, and finally exploded into a bright red blood mist, and spread in the rumbling sound. Starting from Jiuying's position, where the light bands passed before, everything exploded in pieces. Shattered. Destroyed. Ashes and smoke. In the camp, everyone sat on the ground like a lost soul, looking at the broad road outside the camp that was blasted out by Luo Yan's punch in disbelief. The unique skill. Shattered mountains and rivers. PS. 4 chapters are released in a row. Don't keep your appetite. Praise me now. Chapter 430. Finishing work. When Luo Yan launched the operation, Wei Junai and the men from the Iron Horse also entered the designated positions in the coyote camp. Sniper Wang Shan was lying at the window of a building, from where he could clearly see the Huangquan convoy. He licked his thumb, wiped the muzzle with his finger, and then placed the sniper rifle with a matte finish and a cloth-wrapped sight at the window, pointing it in the direction of the Huangquan convoy. Guan Peng's voice rang out in the headset. Be ready, we can act at any time. Don't worry, I'm ready, Wang Shan whispered. At this moment, there was a faint explosion outside the camp. Outside the window, a cold wind suddenly whistled past, and the wind blew outside the shopping mall building, blowing up a puff of snow powder. Inside the building, the stand-in Jiuying, who was in the hall, immediately looked outside. What happened? Is that an explosion? Liu stood up, with a sincere smile. It's okay, I'll go check it out. Mr. Chu, you guys take a rest. He turned around, and walked out the door, leaving with his men. Only the people from Huangquan were left in the hall, and at this time Yang Jiaxi's communicator rang. Mr. Yang, something happened. Yang Jiaxi immediately jumped up. What happened? Someone attacked the camp, and blew up Mr. Chu's car. Oh, Mr. Chu is fine. He rushed out of the camp. Wait, the enemy is chasing him too. Listening to the words on the communicator, Yang Jiaxi suddenly looked at the stand-in Jiuying. The camp was attacked. Mr. Chu broke into the camp and left, but the enemy caught up with him. Is this a trap? The stand-in Jiuying also stood up suddenly. Then the two exchanged glances quickly and whispered, it's too quiet. Where are Liu and his people? Just then, the door of the hall opened, and the two saw that Liu's people had returned. Each of them was carrying a metal box on their backs, and holding a strange gun in their hands. From the pipe connecting the gun to the box behind them, it seemed that this equipment was a flamethrower. Seeing this scene, Yang Jiaxi shouted, go. At this time, he didn't care whether Liu was related to the attack on the wild camp. For them, under this situation, they would not be entangled in whether there was a problem with the coyote camp, but would rather kill the wrong person than let him go. Anyway, losing an agent is nothing to Huangquan. Liu's side was also straightforward. As soon as he came in, he quickly separated. Then, without waiting for Huangquan to draw his gun, he directly sprayed out dragons of fire. The dragons of fire swept back and forth, igniting the furniture in the hall, and turning those Huangquan soldiers who did not react quickly into fireballs. Screams immediately sounded, and flames billowed in the hall. Even so, Yang Jiaxi and Jiuying, who were at the black rope level, rushed out from the yellow spring side. They used Zuanshu to resist the flames, used Yuanli to shake off the thick smoke, and bravely rushed to Liu and others. At the same time, inside the camp, at the yellow spring convoy, the people in the convoy were all startled when they heard the explosion coming from outside. When a black rope level member who served as a temporary commander of the convoy gave an order, the dull sound of gunfire tore through the air, causing the bodies of the soldiers in charge of vigilance in the convoy to fly. The heads of these soldiers were all blown up, and the red and white ones were thrown hard on the snow. Then whistling sounds came from different directions, and then a series of black shadows swept from the air at a very fast speed, and crashed into the convoy. The throat of the black rope elite was dry, and he shouted, encouraged Yuanli, and rushed out of the camp with all his strength. It was a shell fired by a rocket launcher, which was so powerful that even a cultivator at the intermediate level could not fight against such a killing weapon with his flesh and blood. At this time, the elite of the black rope had no time to care about their men, and only knew how to save their lives. Boom. A huge fireball rose in the convoy, and one tank after another was either blown away or lifted into the air by the flames, and then smashed down hard. The sudden fierce firepower crippled the Huanquan convoy from the beginning. The survivors who had experienced 2 waves of attacks, even if they did not die, had broken hands and feet, and were seriously injured. Only a few lucky ones were intact, slightly injured, and still had the strength to fight. At this time, the people of the Iron Horse poured out from their hiding place, each holding an automatic rifle, throwing grenades and shooting at the Huanquan convoy, not saving ammunition at all. The elite of the Black Robe saved his life, but one of his arms was blown off. The pain made his expression distorted, and he quickly shrank into an inconspicuous corner to treat his injuries first. He couldn't understand. The people of the Huanquan were not lazy. They had already checked the nearby camps, but did not find the Iron Horse team. This team with such fierce firepower could not have appeared out of thin air. The only explanation is that the Coyote camp is covering them. After the elite soldier treated his injuries, he was about to call Yang Jiaxi and Jiuying in the building when he saw flames and thick smoke coming out of the shopping mall. Seeing this, the elite soldier quietly crawled to the bodies of several soldiers, then got under the bodies and pretended to be dead. In the shopping mall, Yang Jiaxi and Jiuying rushed out of the sea of fire and pounced on Liu and others. Behind Liu, 2 figures also flashed out. Wei Junai and Guanpeng. The former swung his sword with one hand, and the long sword shone with cold light, slashing out a cold sword wind, to fight against Yang Jiaxi. The latter held a dragon-patterned guandao with 2 hands, dancing with a fierce sword, with the courage of the 3 armies, and crashed into the substitute Jiuying. In a blink of an eye, 4 intermediate-level cultivators fought together. Liu and others immediately retreated, and then threw metal cylinders at the 2 sides in the battle as planned. As soon as the cylinders fell to the ground, they sprayed out gas. The gas was colorless and odorless, but it was poisonous. But both Liu and Wei Junai wore gas masks and breathed fresh oxygen, so they were not afraid of the poison in the air. But Yang Jiaxi and his partner were in a bad situation. They had never thought that they would encounter such a thing, so they naturally did not bring gas masks with them. They were entangled by Wei Junai and Guanpeng again, and had no chance to escape at all. The longer the time dragged, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. Suddenly, Yang Jiaxi and Jiuying tried their best to destroy their energy, and wanted to break through the encirclement, but Wei Junai and Guanpeng were not vegetarians either, so it was easier said than done. In the snow, in the camp of Huanquan, the cooks and servants saw Luo Yan coming in, and they all trembled all over, fearing that they would be killed by this living devil who broke through the camp, and killed the coach with his own strength. Luo Yan used his Wuwang Zuan to scan the area, and confirmed that there were no Huanquan soldiers here. They were just ordinary people responsible for daily life and food. He said in a deep voice through the mask, "I won't kill you. I can also arrange work for you. The premise is that you are willing to cooperate." Chapter 431, 100 Flowers Kill. In the wild camp, a fat chef with a chef's hat stood up. "Sir, my name is Bao Butong. They all call me Lao Bao. As long as you let us go, we will do whatever you ask us to do. Is that right, everyone?" Strictly speaking, these people are not insiders of Huanquan, but are hired by Jiuying to serve the team. Naturally, they will not fight with Luo Yan for Huanquan. For them, it doesn't matter who they work for. It doesn't matter whether they work for Jiuying or Luo Yan. When they heard the chef's words, both the kitchen helpers and the errand boys nodded. Luo Yan read their thoughts and confirmed that they had no intentions that would harm him. He nodded and asked them to pack up their things. He circled the camp again, and when he didn't find any members of Huanquan, he returned to the camp. He returned to Jiuying's chariot. The chariot was deformed in the previous explosion, and many things in the car fell into the camp. These things were basically damaged, and things like tablets were even more severely damaged and could not be repaired. But Luo Yan still put it away, waiting to return to the dungeon to see if he could repair the components inside and find the files related to Huanquan. At this time, he saw a safe with a black surface but no deformation. Luo Yan checked it and found that the surface of the safe was only blackened and slightly melted, but it was still intact overall. So he found tools and opened the safe. There were a few gold bars in the box. Luo Yan took out one of them, bit it, and confirmed that it was pure gold. Although it is said that gold in prosperous times is food in troubled times, after the natural disaster, gold on the surface is not valuable, at least not as valuable as before. But in the dungeon, gold is still quite valuable. Although there are not many gold bars in this box, it can still be exchanged for 5 or 6 million work points. In addition to the gold bars, most of them are some of Jiuying's collections. For example, a golden pocket watch with intricate patterns, a dark golden desert eagle, a bag of ancient copper coins, a few jade pendants, etc. In addition, there is a black titanium steel box. The box is only the size of a palm. After opening it, there is a memory card inside. Luo Yan got a card reader from the camp and plugged it in to interpret it. It turned out to be a training method for several fighting skills. It was called a few fighting skills, but it could also be regarded as a boxing manual. The name of the boxing manual was 100 Flower Skill. This set of boxing skills was divided into 6 styles: Powder Cloud, Dragon Flying, White Lotus, Jade Butterfly, Manjusaka and Kill 100 Flowers. Except for the last style, the first 5 styles were all named after different lotus flowers. Each style has a different effect. The last style, Kill 100 Flowers, is the most powerful in the boxing manual, which is almost comparable to the ultimate killing move. From the description, it was the fighting skill that Jiuying used last, which was like a sea of flowers. However, Jiuying's style, Kill 100 Flowers, only had its form, but not its charm. It should have been practiced not long ago. If it is cultivated to perfection, the power is definitely not limited to this. After reading the boxing manual, Luo Yan used Shen Zhang's strong memory ability to memorize the 100 Flowers Kill boxing manual. Although he prefers to use swords, it is always a good idea to learn one more skill. It is always good to have more skills. Moreover, this set of boxing manual should be more interesting for women. When Yang Tao reaches the 3rd level of the primary level, it is just right to teach her 1 or 2 moves in this set of boxing manual for her to use. After all, no one can guarantee that he will always have a sword in his hand. Later, Li Yu brought people to meet Luo Yan. Mr. Chigi, the people from Huanquan have been dealt with. Luo Yan nodded slightly and told Li Yu that Bao Butong and others would stay in the coyote camp, and then asked him to take them away. When Li Yu and Liuc were dealing with the camp incident, they were stunned when they saw the 1000-meter road outside the camp that was opened by Luo Yan's punch. They couldn't believe that this was done by human power. Old Li, the short-haired woman Liuc, handed a cigarette to Li Yu. "Did Mr. Chigi make this?" Li Yu took the cigarette and lit it. "I heard from the cooks and servants that Mr. Chigi smashed Yu into pieces with this punch." Liuc blew out a puff of smoke from her lips. "Oh my god, I've only seen this kind of thing in novels and movies before. Now that I see it with my own eyes, it's quite fantastic." Li Yu smiled. "The giant beast has appeared. What else is impossible?" Liuc heard it and said, "Then tell me, if I send myself to Mr. Chigi's bed, will he want me?" Li Yu glanced at her and said seriously, "Only this thing is impossible." Liuc said angrily, "Why, am I not beautiful?" Li Yu walked into the camp. "This has nothing to do with being beautiful. The main thing is that I think Mr. Chigi doesn't like you. Unless you quit smoking first, and then learn to put on some makeup to make yourself more feminine, then it's possible." Liuc spit out a puff of smoke and said, "Forget it. It's more painful for me to quit smoking than to kill me." The two returned to the camp while talking, and then led the troops to take away all the things that could be used in the camp, such as weapons or cars. When Luo Yan returned to Xiaolang's camp, Wei Junai reported, "Master, 90% of the people in Huanquan died, and the rest were seriously injured and would not live long. Only one is still alive. He said he was from the Black Rope level and was willing to provide us with information, so I didn't kill him." Guan Peng next to him put down his bloody guandao and laughed. That guy was also smart, hiding under the corpse and pretending to be dead. Fortunately, Junai stabbed him one by one and scared him out of the corpse. Otherwise, he might have really run away. Luo Yan glanced at Wei Junai and nodded. "You did a good job. When you go back, I will give you a fighting skill as a reward." Wei Junai was not as excited as Yang Heo, but just nodded. "Thank you, master." A moment later, a one-armed man was brought over. Wei Junai pushed him. Master, his name is Guwon. Luo Yan opened the Wuang Zuan and stared at Guwon. If this man dared to lie, he could go to accompany Jiuying. Mr. Chigi, my name is Guwon. I know Jiuying and know a lot of information about Huangquan. As long as you let me go, I can tell you everything. Guwon knew that his life and property depended on the man in front of him, so he quickly adjusted his attitude and pretended to know, but not to say, and to tell everything. Luo Yan stared into his eyes and asked in a deep voice in the mask, how many people have you infiltrated into the Northland? In addition to Jiuying, are there any higher level people? What arrangements do you have? What plans do you have? Guwon did not dare to hide it and said, we Huangquan have wanted to take over the Northland for a long time, but it was not until last year that we really started to take action. At present, the people including Jiuying are just the vanguard, coming to lead the charge. There will be arrangements later, but that will be at least 2 or 3 years later. Chapter 432, Gathering Intelligence. Currently, Huangquan is implementing the first phase of the plan, sending several teams including Jiuying to quietly enter the northern border. The focus is on spreading the surface forces. On this basis, we will try to sneak into the underground city, develop underground forces, and thus take root in the underground city, to prepare for the second phase of the plan in the future. Guwon said loudly. In addition to Jiuying, the implementers of the first phase include several Zong backbones. As far as I know, there are 9 Huan, Luo, Jiuying, Bao Hua and others. At this point, he looked at Luo Yan with some timidity. Because I'm at a lower level, I only know these people from Jiuying's daily orders and the people I often contact. As for more, I will. Luo Yan nodded. It doesn't matter, continue. Guwon breathed a sigh of relief and continued, including Jiuying. These backbones of the Zong class obey the orders of a leader of the calling class. Yinrong, nicknamed VIP. He is a strong man in the Tangsuan realm. Luo Yan got a lot of information from Guwon. In addition to the general strength, number of people and even the scope of activities of the backbones of the Zong class he mentioned, he also obtained the information of the commander who commanded these Zong backbones in the first phase plan. Luo Yan recorded this information and planned to report it to the Black Witch. After sorting and summarizing it, he believed that this would allow him to obtain another large number of contribution points. After that, he took Guwon away. Although this person was only a black rope class and his status in Huangquan was not very high, he could not let him go at will. After exposing a lot of information about Huangquan, Guwon did not dare to return to Huangquan, so he had to bite the bullet and surrender to Luo Yan. That afternoon, Luo Yan left the coyote camp and asked Liu to continue to manage and try to expand, annex other nearby ground camps, and establish transportation channels to prepare for future confrontation with Huangquan. 2 days later, on the evening of the 8th day of the Lunar New Year, Luo Yan returned to Guangling. He had been away for several days. After handing Guwon over to Wenzhou, he returned to the academy. Guangling City, Old City. It was night. Just like the headquarters of Red Gate is a restaurant, the headquarters of Black Owl is a tea house. Chunming Tea House. At this time in the evening, the tea house has already closed. After all, Black Owl does not make money by selling tea. This is just a cover. With money, they can do whatever they want. The tea house is closed in the evening, let alone now. But at this time, a car came to this not so wide street and stopped in front of Chunming Tea House. The door opened, the driver got out first, ran to the car, and opened the door for the people inside. As soon as the door opened, a foot stepped out first, and then a tall and young figure got out of the car. He was about 20 years old, less than 30 years old. He should be an age of vigor and vitality, but this young man exudes a calm and restrained atmosphere. With a faint smile on his face, he glanced at the sign of Chunming Tea House, then stepped aside and bowed slightly to show respect to the other person in the car. Another person got out of the car. He was a thin old man with a slightly hunched back. He wore a black gown with a stand-up collar and open hems on both sides, and cloth shoes of the same color. The old man looked up at the door of the tea house, expressionless, and nodded slightly to the young man. The young man smiled and walked forward to the door, knocking lightly with his fingers. The door knocked 3 times, and the door opened. A waiter in the tea house peeked through the crack of the door. It's closed. Didn't you see it? Are you blind at such a young age? The young man was not angry and snorted, "You black owls are really arrogant." The waiter in the tea house was stunned for a moment, but he was not stupid. Seeing the tone of the visitor, he lowered his posture and said, "Who are you, sir? I have an appointment with Mr. Won." "Oh, my last name is Luo. Luo Nangsing." The young man smiled and introduced himself. With a creak, the door opened immediately. The waiter in the tea house looked terrified. It turned out to be the eldest son of the Luo family in Guangling. "I was blind and offended young Master Luo. Please forgive me," Luo Nangsing said lightly. "It's okay. Take me to see Mr. Won." "Yes, young Master Luo, please come this way." The waiter in the tea house hurriedly led the way. After Luo Nangsing entered the door, he turned sideways and respectfully said to the thin old man behind him, "Mr. Gao, please come this way." Gao Lin, the former head of the Guangling Corps, walked in and nodded gently. Luo Nangsing not only did not blame him, but on the contrary, he looked respectful and could not find any fault. He still remembered that when the city lord was elected, he chopped a knife for the Minister of Information when he left home. He suspected that if Gao Lin was not at home that day, Fang Yao's knife would not have only come to his feet. Soon, they were in a quiet room. At the entrance of the quiet room, a small rockery served as the entrance. There was a small pond under the rockery, and Takoi was swimming happily in it. Walking around the entrance, they could see sandalwood burning in the room, the smoke curling. In the room, they saw the leader of the Black Owl, a man playing with 2 iron balls in his hands. Wan Cheng. When he saw Luo Nangsing, he laughed and walked up to him and said, "Master Luo, I haven't seen you for a long time. You have become more handsome. It's a pity that I don't have a daughter, otherwise I would definitely marry someone higher up." Luo Nangsing responded modestly. Wan Cheng asked again, "How is Master Luo doing recently?" Luo Nangsing smiled and said, "My father is fine. Uncle Wan is very thoughtful." Wan Cheng sighed and said, "I'm in such a position today because of Master Luo's care. I'm always grateful for Master Luo's kindness and have always wanted to visit him. But I have a lowly reputation. If I go to your house, it will only bring shame to Master Luo. It is even necessary for young Master Luo to come in person. I'm terrified." Luo Nangsing shook his head and said, "Uncle Wan, you are too polite. My father often said that the friendship with Uncle Wan is a gentleman's one, and we should talk about the heart rather than the deeds. Besides, it was my father's idea that Uncle Wan was dormant in the old city. To be honest, it is our Luo family that has wronged Uncle Wan." Wan Cheng waved his hands and smiled. "What grievance? I don't feel wronged at all." Then he said, "Come on, young Master Luo, please take a seat. Someone, serve tea." Then he looked at Gao Lin. "Who is this?" Gao Lin smiled slightly. "He is just an idle person, not worth mentioning." Wan Cheng naturally didn't take it seriously. From Gao Lin's demeanor and even Luo Nangsing's attitude, he knew that this thin old man was not simple at all. He treated him as a distinguished guest. After the 3 of them sat down, Luo Nangsing smiled and said, "My father asked me to come to your house this time because he really wants to ask Uncle Wan for a favor." Wan Cheng said, "Oh, if you can use me, Master Luo, please tell me directly." "Okay." Luo Nangsing was not polite either and said in a deep voice, "I wonder if Uncle Wan has heard that our Guangling city is going to promote the practice of visualization for all the people next. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 433 Blood Pagoda. All people are practicing. Wan Cheng nodded slightly. "I've heard a little bit about it." Luo Nangsing said in a gentle tone, "On the Lantern Festival, the underground city will hold a Lantern Festival. At that time, the new team of the underground city will announce this matter at the Lantern Festival. My father's meaning is that he hopes that Uncle Wan can exert your influence and make this matter a little bit of waves." Wan Cheng's heart skipped a beat. He is not stupid. Of course he knows that Luo Xianai definitely does not want a little wave. It's a storm. At the same time, he also knows that Luo Xianai is deliberately making trouble for the new city lord. As for the reason, he certainly knows it. But if he does this, it will obviously offend the new city lord of Guangling, which Luo Naxing calmly took out a memory card and put it on the table. In it, there is an advanced practice method selected for you by Elder Gao. In addition, my father will give Uncle Wan 10 million activity funds. After the matter is completed, there will be another generous gift. Wan Cheng's eyes suddenly lit up. It is extremely difficult for people like them to practice. Even if they are in the underground city, the channels to get the skills are far better than those on the surface. However, most people stop at the intermediate level. After all, the advanced skills are either in the hands of the academy or the core. As for the strategic mansion, forget it. Now Wancheng has cultivated to the 5th level of the intermediate level. Going further, he can only cultivate this level to the great perfection. As for the advanced skills, you can't buy them with money. Now the Luo family has taken out a set of advanced skills and added 10 million activity funds and promised that there will be a generous gift after the matter is completed. Wancheng's heart was pounding. He was about to agree, but suddenly a face wearing a wooden mask flashed in his mind. So the words turned into a sigh when they came to his lips. Master Luo, it's not that I don't know how to appreciate your kindness, but recently, hey. Luo Naxing seemed to have done his homework, and now he understood the meaning of the song, and said, Uncle Wan, are you worried about the Red Gate? Wancheng immediately followed the trend. Yes, at the New Year's Eve banquet, the Red Gate suppressed all of us, and made us feel ashamed. Now we are asked to contribute money and effort, otherwise, I'm afraid that I will be in great trouble. So, I really can't spare the time and energy to do this for Master Luo. Luo Naxing smiled faintly and looked at Gao Lin. Mr. Gao is here for this matter. Uncle Wan, what do you think will happen if the Red Gate is leaderless? Wancheng's eyes lit up. Asterisk 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 the 10th day of the first lunar month. Basin Academy, Training Hall. Wen Feng Hua coughed twice, smiled and nodded. You can start. Hearing this, Luo Yan walked to the middle of the training hall. Today, he will practice the secret method, Blood Pagoda. This secret method was obtained from the reward of the Qingyang Corps. At that time, the Corps Commander Feng Qingyang had instructed that the Blood Pagoda could only be practiced after reaching the advanced level. As the secret method for advancing to the Blood Shura, the Blood Pagoda has a greater improvement for the user, but there will be certain dangers when practicing. So Luo Yan asked Wei Fenghua to give him instructions. The Blood Shura has the effects of stimulating the spirit, maintaining excitement, suppressing injuries, and the most important blood evil. The Blood Pagoda is based on the former, and goes a step further. In addition to the effects of the Blood Shura, according to the description, after using the Blood Pagoda, the blood pool will emerge. Fighting within the range of the blood pool, Luo Yan will gain the effects of will to fight, blood blade, blood offering, bone eating and so on. At this time, standing in the middle of the training hall, Luo Yan recalled the relevant information of the Blood Pagoda, and then tried to use the secret method. In an instant, the light in the entire training hall suddenly became dim and gradually stained with a layer of blood. When Luo Yan's whole body suddenly radiated blood, the light in the entire space not only turned blood red, but also had a sticky feeling. The floor of the training hall disappeared, and groups of illusory blood plasma spread from Luo Yan's feet, flooding the entire training hall in an instant. Although it was the first time to use it, Luo Yan was immature in many aspects, but Wei Fenghua already had an indescribable discomfort. He narrowed his eyes slightly, secretly practiced the skills, and his breathing became smooth. At this time, Luo Yan suddenly had a bloody and brutal meaning, like a hungry beast staring at its prey, making Wei Fenghua even have the illusion of swallowing saliva. Look at Luo Yan again. If it is said that before using Blood Shura, Luo Yan's body was just surging with blood, making him look like a Shura evil ghost from hell, then now, after opening Blood Pagoda, Luo Yan's body is not bloody, but his body from head to toe seems to be flowing with extremely sticky blood plasma. He looked like a demon god who had walked out of the Abyssy hell. As Luo Yan exuded the extremely brutal and bloody aura, the illusory blood pool on the ground began to boil. Gurgling, blood bubbles kept popping up and breaking. Luo Yan's eyes were red, but his eyes were calm, just flashing a little surprise. At this time, Wen Fenghua saw him raise the long sword he used for training, and waved it casually. A small wave of blood suddenly spurted out of the blood pool and barely condensed into the shape of a sword blade. Luo Yan took a deep breath. The strange appearance of the blood pool and the blood plasma on his body, that seemed to be real, quickly disappeared. The light in the training hall also returned to normal. The suffocating breath on Luo Yan's body also disappeared, as if it was just Wei Fenghua's illusion just now. After a few seconds, Wei Fenghua said, "What do you feel?" Luo Yan closed his eyes and thought, "I have performed the secret technique according to its key points. However, perhaps because I have just started practicing, I can only use the first 2 of the 4 effects of the secret technique. That is, will to fight and blood blade. The former affects my spirit. In addition to the stimulating effect of blood shura, it also makes me warlike and wants to kill all the lives in front of me. And I feel that will to fight has also improved my physical functions, making me feel omnipotent. In actual combat, this will make my attacks quite sharp and will frighten my opponents. But if I get too caught up in this emotion, it will also make me reckless and easily injured." Wen Fenghua nodded and said, "What else?" Luo Yan opened his eyes and waved the sword in his hand. "After activating the secret technique, any of my attacks will have the blood blade effect added. It can attack at medium and long distances. It is very sharp and has the blood evil effect. It can be regarded as a variant of military spirit, but it can be used in conjunction with military spirit, any combat skills, and unique skills. But even if I use combat skills or unique skills, the power of the blood blade will not be increased. The only thing related to the power of the blood blade is my proficiency in the blood pagoda in my own energy realm. But now, I can only use the blood blade in a preliminary way. You can also see that the blood blade just now was very forced, and even the outline was not very clear, and the power was even more average. You should know that in the description, after fully learning the blood pagoda, 3 to 5 blood blades will appear in each attack. I can hardly show even one now. I need a lot of practice and actual combat before I can use this secret method well and use the other 2 effects." Chapter 434, Mixed Feelings. Wen Fenghua nodded with a smile. Among many secret methods, blood floating Buddha can also be called top grade. It is naturally not as easy to practice as other methods. You have just started practicing, and you have made such progress. It is quite good. This is not only because you have practiced blood ashura, but also because you are very insightful. This is very important. Luo Yan was not proud or humble, but just listened quietly. Wen Fenghua continued, "If you want to have a deeper understanding of blood floating Buddha, I suggest you visit someone." Luo Yan's eyes moved slightly. "Who?" "Fang Yao, the director of the underground city information department. You should know him." Wen Fenghua clenched his fist and coughed a few times. "You have a good relationship with Yang Lixi. You can ask him to introduce you. The Yang family and Fang Yao are quite close." Luo Yan was a little surprised. Of course he knew Fang Yao. When he sent a group of Yao into the core, he asked the people from the security department to intercept them on the way. After Luo Yan started the killing spree, Yang Zhen, the director of the construction bureau, and Fang Yao arrived together. At that time, Fang Yao looked at his hand in confusion, and now Luo Yan still didn't know what it meant. Now that Wei Fenghua suggested that he visit him, Luo Yan felt that this Minister of Information would not be so simple, so he nodded and agreed. He decided to visit Minister Fang after the big sports meeting. 2 more days passed. There were only 3 days left before the Lantern Festival. That night, in the quiet room of the Ju building of the Red Gate, Luo Yan was surrounded by a bloodlight as light as smoke. This bloodlight kept entering and exiting Luo Yan's body with his breathing. Luo Yan has exchanged for the Blood Transformation Sutra and is currently practicing the first level. The first level of this practice is the word blood transformation. After practicing, the blood in Luo Yan's body will be mobilized, and he will release amazing power and show blood-colored clouds. Now he has only started the first level of practice. The effect of this level of blood transformation sutra is limited. In addition to releasing the power in his own blood, it also makes the opponent's blood and ki fluctuate, and he is restless. The third level of the blood transformation sutra is considered a minor success. At the third level, one can refine the opponent's blood essence and make it work for oneself. In addition, Luo Yan found that the blood transformation sutra is a perfect match with the secret method blood pagoda. Even blood shura is quite good. The merit is complete. Luo Yan exhaled and stood up. When he walked out of the quiet room, he saw Wenzhou waiting for a long time. Seeing Luo Yan, the fake Taoist priest hurriedly stood up and said, "Master, Guanpeng is here." It was he who asked Wenzhou to find Guanpeng. He immediately made a gesture and asked the fake Taoist priest to call him in. After Guanpeng came in, Luo Yan said in a deep voice in the mask, "Are Lu Sheng and the other two still in the underground city?" Guanpeng smiled and said, "Yes, Mr. Chigi. I have asked people to keep an eye on them these days." Luo Yan nodded slightly and looked at Wenzhou. "Bring those two here." Then, Wenzhou went to catch people, while Luo Yan and Guanpeng left the restaurant and came to the Afeni paper umbrella shop. The paper umbrella shop was open, but this time, not only the word Fei on the sign was not lit, but the light bulbs on the entire sign were not turned on. There was only a dim light in the shop, and a figure was sitting on a chair, mechanically and numbly making paper umbrellas. Chen Fei, with messy hair, sunken eye sockets, and thin cheeks, was biting a cigarette between his lips. In front of him was a cloud of smoke. He was making umbrella ribs, but after most of the day, he hadn't made a single one. At this time, a voice came from the door. "With your speed, if I were a woman, I would run too. If I don't run, I'll just have to follow you and starve to death." Chen Fei raised his head and saw a middle-aged man walking and cursing. His eyes moved, and then he smiled bitterly. "Even you come to make fun of me. I don't have time to laugh at you. I have a bunch of bad boys under me waiting for me to support them. I'm very busy every day." Guanpeng picked up a paper umbrella and looked at it. "Chen Fei, you are not cut out for business. You said that for a woman. You gave up your job as a serious college teacher and came here to learn how to do business. It would be strange if you didn't lose everything. I say, after all these years, is it worth it?" Chen Fei did not answer. He took a puff of cigarette and cut the ribs of the umbrella with a knife. Guanpeng continued, "Do you remember what I told you last time? You are a stubborn person. If you had agreed to it that day, would you, Chen Fei, still be afraid of having no money, and would your Xiaoli run away with someone else? Chen Fei, you should wake up. These days, true love is worthless. You can only have true love if you have money." Chen Fei blew out a smoke ring. "Come on, Lao Guan. Are you still my friend? Is there anyone who keeps rubbing salt into a friend's wound like you?" Guanpeng smiled. "If I don't rub some salt, it will hurt you to death. How can you wake up? How about meeting Mr. Chigi? If you work for him, what kind of woman do you want?" Chen Fei glanced at him. "After talking for so long, you act like a lobbyist." "No, I'm not in the mood." "Really?" Guanpeng clapped his hands and stood up, sighing deliberately. "It's hard for Mr. Chigi to help you find Xiaoli. Since you don't want to see him, forget it." Chen Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. He stood up suddenly. "Really? Xiaoli is back?" Guanpeng glanced at him and scolded. "Be more promising, please. That woman dumped you, and you're still so excited." Chen Fei smiled bitterly. "What can I do? I gave my heart to her." "Hey." Guanpeng shook his head. "Brother, forget it. Every family has its own problems. What about this Mr. Chigi?" Chen Fei immediately said, "See you. I'll see you." At this time, the sound of brakes was heard outside the store, followed by a man's scream and a woman's begging for mercy. Chen Fei hurriedly ran outside the store and saw several big men dragging Lu Sheng and Xiaoli out of the car. Lu Sheng's head was bleeding, and he just stood up and was kicked in the calf and knelt directly on the ground. He looked at the disheveled woman next to him and yelled, "It's all your fault. You jinx. I've been losing money since you followed me. I was beaten up today. I'm so unlucky. How could I have to deal with someone like you?" Then he smiled at the big man next to him. "Brother, please let me go. I don't know this woman." Yes. He pointed at Chen Fei standing at the door of the store. That's her husband. If you want to settle accounts with her, find Chen Fei, not me. Lu Sheng, you bastard. You made promises to me when you tricked me into bed, and now you want to kick me away. Xiao Lei rushed over and tried to bite Lu Sheng, but was caught and thrown to the ground. The woman turned her head and looked at the big man next to her. Please let me go. I don't even know you. Chen Fei looked at this scene with mixed feelings. Chapter 435. If life could just be like our first meeting. Standing in the corner of the street, Luo Yan came out from the shadows when he saw that everyone was there. It was not until this time that Chen Fei, Xiao Lei and Lu Sheng discovered the existence of Luo Yan. They then saw that after Luo Yan came out, those fierce looking men all looked respectful. In the last second, they were still fierce wolves and tigers, and in the next second, they all turned into well-behaved puppies and kittens. Chen Fei and the others were all stunned. At this time, Wen Zhao hurriedly got out of the car and came to Luo Yan. Master, according to your instructions, I brought the person here. Luo Yan nodded slightly. At this time, Guanpeng took the opportunity to introduce Fei. This is the Mr. Chigi I told you about. After hearing what Wen Zhao and Guanpeng said, Xiao Lei seemed to understand something and suddenly pounced on Luo Yan, but was stopped by a man. The woman cried, Mr. Chigi, I don't know how Chen Fei offended you, but I have nothing to do with him anymore. Chen Fei is a waste. I was blind to follow him, but I have left him. The feud between you and him has nothing to do with me. Please let me go. She was really smart. With just one or two sentences, she realized that Luo Yan came here today because of Chen Fei, but she obviously misunderstood. At the door of the paper umbrella shop, Chen Fei was shocked to hear Xiao Lei say this, and his body shook slightly. Xiao Lei was still crying and shouting. Luo Yan whispered in the mask at this time, shut her up. Immediately, a big man walked over and covered the woman's mouth with his hand to stop her from shouting. At this time, Chen Fei smiled bitterly and asked, Mr. Chigi, will you let her go as long as I agree to your request? Luo Yan said in a deep voice in the mask, no. I just brought them here for you to deal with. I didn't intend to use this as a condition. As for that matter, if you agree, I will pay you 10,000 work points every month. I will arrange a new residence for you, a vehicle and servants, to take care of your daily life. If you teach well, and the students you teach can be put to use, I will have other rewards. In addition, at the end of each year, I will give you 50,000 work points as a bonus. I just give you a choice. As for what you choose, I won't force you. Chen Fei was a little surprised. It turned out that when he saw Chigi bringing people here, he planned to use his beloved as a condition. Unexpectedly, the result was like this. Xiao Lei also looked unbelievable. In her eyes, the down and out useless man was actually appreciated by the mysterious man in front of him. A salary of 10,000 work points per month, arranged residence, servants, and vehicles. There is also a year-end bonus of 50,000 every year. This was something she had never imagined before, but it was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that this mysterious man called Chigi seemed to have great power. Even Lu Sheng, who boasted that he was omnipotent, was like a mouse and dared not utter a word in front of his men. If Chen Fei was taken care of by him, he would definitely live a rich and prosperous life in the future. Immediately, she regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. She regretted why she left Chen Fei so quickly, and she regretted what she had just said. Chen Fei calmed down and said, so, I can do whatever I want with them? Luo Yan nodded. Chen Fei looked at Lu Sheng, who was kneeling on the ground. His expression turned cold, and he said, I never want to see this ungrateful dog again. Lu Sheng felt a chill on his back, and felt that something was wrong, so he kowtowed to Chen Fei. Brother Fei, please let me go. He slapped himself again. It's my fault, I'm wrong. I shouldn't seduce my sister-in-law. I'm not a human being. I'm wrong. Brother Fei, you are a great man. Don't you always say repay evil with kindness? Don't bother with me. Chen Fei glanced at him and said, there is a sequel to that sentence. Repay evil with kindness. How to repay kindness? So, you should repay evil with justice, and repay kindness with kindness. I have said it many times, but unfortunately, you always hear the first sentence and ignore the following. Lu Sheng looked at a loss. What does this mean? I don't understand. What does this mean? Wen Zhao looked at Luo Yan at this time and asked for instructions. Luo Yan said lightly, do as Mr. Chen said, never see him again, then let him disappear. Wen Zhao turned around and made a gesture. The two big men immediately dragged Lu Sheng away, and Lu Sheng shouted for help, and the sound gradually faded away. Chen Fei looked at Xiao Lei again and walked over. Luo Yan made a gesture, and the big man who was covering the woman's mouth let go and stepped back. Xiao Lei quickly tidied herself up, smiled, and looked at Chen Fei. Fei, let's go back. I will live a good life with you in the future. You want a child, don't you? I will give you one. No, several. Chen Fei smiled a little bit and reached out to tidy up Xiaolo's messy hair. You look like the first time I saw you. At that time, I could see that you really liked me. It's a pity that life has changed you. Chen Fei sighed softly. If life could only be like the first time we met, how wonderful it would be. Xiaolo's body trembled slightly and tears fell one by one. Fei, listen to me. I'm tired. Chen Fei helped her tidy up her clothes, then took out a scorecard. Here is some money I've saved over the years, all for you. It's okay, take it. It was originally meant for you. Take it and live your own life. Let's say goodbye today. Xiao Lei shook her head and wanted to say something, but a big man pulled her away and pulled her out of the street. Chen Fei raised his head, his eyes red, and after a moment, he turned around and said to Luo Yan, Mr. Kai Jiuying, I'm very grateful for everything you have done for me, but please give me a few days to adjust. I will come to you after the Lantern Festival. What do you think? Luo Yan said, you should rest for a while. I will also go out after the Lantern Festival. I will let Guanpeng find you when I come back. Chen Fei nodded in agreement and then returned to the store with a gloomy expression. Luo Yan did not stay, got into the car and left. In the car, he said to Guanpeng, later, you will buy the simulation cabin for me. When teacher Chen comes, you can take him to choose. Guanpeng nodded. At this time, the car drove out of the street and turned a corner. In front of the headlights, a figure appeared under the light. It was an old man, a little hunchbacked. He was wearing a black long coat with a stand-up collar and open hems on both sides, and cloth shoes of the same color on his feet. He stood there with his hands behind his back, as if he didn't see the car, even though the driver had been honking. Seeing that the car was about to hit, the old man suddenly jumped into the air, raised his hand to accumulate strength, and slapped it down. Chapter 436, Battle of Long Street. When he saw an old man in the headlights, Luo Yan was already alert. When the old man in black stood up, Luo Yan immediately pushed Guanpeng, who was sitting next to him, and rushed to the car door. So when the old man in black gathered his strength and slapped down in the air, Luo Yan and Guanpeng, who were sitting in the back of the car, had already come out of the car. Bang! The back of the car sank instantly, as if it was flattened by an invisible big hand. From the air, half of the car body and the road surface were slapped out of a huge hand. The front of the car suddenly tilted up. Fortunately, the driver did not drive very fast, otherwise the car would have bounced up. Now the front of the car tilted up high and fell to the ground again. It shook violently, shattering the windshield and letting the airbag run out. The driver hit the airbag head on and fainted. On the street, pedestrians screamed and ran away, not daring to stay for long, for fear of getting into trouble. Many buildings were also affected, with cracks appearing in the windows, and street lamps were tilted here and there, and some directly exploded and fell sideways, tearing off some wires. Luo Yan came to the street and looked at the figure that fell on the car. He opened the Wuang Zuan and read the other party's information. Gaolin, 65 years old, former commander of the Guanglin Corps. Realm, Tangsuan level 3. A strong man in the Tangsuan realm. In addition, he is also the former commander of the Guanglin Corps. Regarding the former commander, Wen Fenghua mentioned it in his spare time, but the teacher just mentioned it briefly and didn't say too much in detail. Luo Yan only knew his name, but didn't even know what he looked like. Today I finally saw him, but I was confused. Why did Gaolin attack me, the leader of the Red Gate? I didn't have time to think about it. Because the old man had a gloomy face and rushed over again. Gaolin didn't have Wu Wang Zuan, so he naturally didn't know the depth of Luo Yan. He only inferred from the information he had collected that Luo Yan was at least at the intermediate level. He might even be at the advanced level. Therefore, although he did not use his full strength in the previous attack, he used 40% to 50%. He did not expect that the other party was clever and did not die. His eyes were fierce, and then his Yuanli burst out. Gaolin's body suddenly exploded with dense dark purple arcs. The skin of his skinny body seemed to have lost all moisture, just like a dead old tree. Then a 6-armed demon god statue more than 3 meters tall appeared around him. The demon god held dark purple electric lights in his hands. His image was majestic and fierce. The timid would tremble all over after just one look. In an instant, Gaolin used the Tangsuan level skills and used the Shenzang. Although he did not use the secret method, he had already exerted 70% of his strength. 70% of the combat power is more than enough to kill the intermediate level in seconds, and even the advanced level can be killed. Luo Yan's expression did not change under the mask, but he secretly said in his heart that it was amazing. This was his first time facing a Tangsuan realm expert. The turbulent pressure made it difficult for him to breathe, and he almost released his soul phantom. But in the end, he restrained this impulse, used the blood transformation sutra with all his strength, secretly activated the dragon transformation posture, and then launched the secret method blood pagoda. After a series of actions, it can be said that except for the 2 trump cards of Sword Shadow and Soul Phantom, all other cards that can be used were used. Suddenly, the light on the street, which was not obvious to begin with, was now stained with a thick layer of blood. A blood light spread from Luo Yan's body and covered the street in an instant, making the original concrete ground ooze out illusory blood, making it seem like a pool of blood appeared on the ground. Immediately, passers-by screamed in shock. Being in such a terrifying vision, few people could remain calm. At the same time, Luo Yan, whose body seemed to be dripping with sticky blood, shouted in his mask, "Lao Guan, call the core, and tell them that their former head is committing a crime here." Gaolin, who was rushing towards his target, could not help but change his expression. Although he did not make any disguise, he thought that he had left the core for a long time, and in a place like the old city, where all kinds of people were mixed, there were probably not many people who knew him. Moreover, this red ghost suddenly appeared last year, and had been in Guangling for less than a year, so there was no reason for him to know him. But now his identity was exposed by the other party. Gaolin was immediately distracted. Luo Yan's eyes suddenly lit up, and he let the fighting will affect his spirit, making himself full of fighting spirit, and immediately went to meet Gaolin. At the same time, he urged the amber light gas that was naturally released in the dragon transformation posture, letting them wrap around the old man like tentacles, releasing the last of the stored toxin essence. When the invisible amber light was entangled with Gaolin, the intuition of the Tangsuan realm made the old man feel the danger. Without thinking, Gaolin believed in his intuition and threw a punch at Luo Yan before getting close. His fist instantly burst into amazing lightning, and the whole fist flashed with lightning, like a small ball of lightning. When Gaolin threw this punch, the surrounding space was thundering and lightning, and the amber light, that was difficult to see with the naked eye, was torn apart, causing the toxin essence in the light to be unable to be released. Luo Yan's whole body burst out with amazing momentum. This momentum has the improvement brought by the release of the potential of the blood essence in the body by the blood transformation sutra, the bonus brought by the will to fight, and the shocking murderous aura in the dragon transformation posture, which is like the awakening of the earth dragon. They mixed together to form a terrifying pressure, which made Gaolin's face change. Then, Luo Yan raised his cloak, and a fist stretched out from it, facing Gaolin. The 2 fists collided with each other. In front of Luo Yan's fist, the void seemed to be shattered, and colorful light bands broke out. These light bands quickly passed by Gaolin, spread to the back, and spread to the far side of the street. The next second, the atmosphere shook and thunder continued. Everything within the distribution range of those light bands was violently vibrating, and the frequency suddenly increased. Then Gaolin's figure blurred. The old man groaned, pulled his fist and retreated violently, and his arms were gathered in front of him to protect his head and chest, defending with all his strength. Boom. Amidst the huge humming sound, a turbid wave sprayed from the ground in front of Luo Yan's fist, raising 100 meters of wind and sand, and rushed away in an instant. Amid a crackling sound, a hideous wound was torn on the long street in the old city. The whole street was almost destroyed by Luo Yan's punch. Inside the buildings on both sides, everyone fell to the ground with weak legs, looking at the thick smoke outside the broken windows. They thought that the street had just been plowed by fierce artillery fire, and they couldn't believe that this was done by human power. In the thick smoke, Gaolin's body trembled slightly, and his black robe turned into strips of cloth, revealing his lean body that looked like a dead tree. Blood beads gradually appeared on his body, and then strands of blood slid down from different parts of his body and ripped onto the ground. Chapter 437 Spending money like water. Unique skill. It's actually a unique skill. Gaolin exhaled, his eyes complicated. More than that. That secret method, although very immature, is indeed the blood pagoda. Unique skill, plus a superior secret method. How can a mere gang leader possess these two things? Gaolin shook his head. Not simple. This person is definitely not simple. Behind the red gate, I'm afraid there is another great god. He patted his shoulders and walked out of the hustle and bustle. As expected, the red ghost was no longer visible. Thinking back to just now, he used combat skills against unique skills, and it was not unfair to lose. In addition, the opponent should also have some concerns, worried that the matter would get too big and he would not be able to clean it up. Therefore, the power of that unique skill was not completely gone, so it only destroyed a street, and even the buildings on both sides did not collapse. Otherwise, even if he was in the Tangxuan realm, it would not be as simple as just a few external injuries. At least he would have to lie down for 3 to 5 days. Small place, but there are actually many hidden talents. Gaolin laughed twice, dodged into an alley, and disappeared in a blink of an eye. After a while, the people in the building dared to come to the street. Looking at the broken street, they were silent for a long time. Redgate Jude building. In the quiet room, Luo Yan took off his mask and breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Tao, who had 2 braids today, brought a cup of tea and offered it. Teacher, please have some tea. She glanced at Luo Yan and felt something was wrong, so she asked, Teacher, are you okay? Luo Yan shook his head. After taking another sip of tea, the restless mind affected by the will to fight calmed down. He secretly said that he was lucky. He first saw through Gaolin's identity and then asked Guan Peng to call the core, which made the old man feel cautious. Then he used all his secret skills to destroy the entire street. Such a big commotion would definitely attract the attention of the dungeon. These conditions combined allowed him to successfully escape and prevent Gaolin from catching up. In addition, Gaolin's inference was correct. Before, on the street, Luo Yan was worried about hurting innocent people, so he didn't use the power of broken mountains and rivers. And the direction and angle of the punch were also calculated, so that this unique skill would only destroy the street as much as possible, and not hurt the residents in the buildings on both sides. Otherwise, maybe he could try to kill Tangxuan with a high-level realm. But, why did Gaolin kill the red ghost? He has no motive. Unless, he was entrusted by someone. Luo Yan's eyes suddenly became sharp, scaring the girl next to him. Yang Tao's face turned pale slightly, and she felt that her teacher suddenly became murderous, and the light in his eyes was like lightning, which was very scary. Luo Yan stood up, and had already made some guesses. If there is anyone in the underground city who wants to kill him now, it must be those people headed by Wancheng. Among these people, Wancheng is the most suspicious. However, Luo Yan doesn't think that Wancheng can invite a Tangxuan realm strongman like Gaolin. There must be a link in this. And this link, Luo Yan can't see clearly at present. He immediately thought of Jiuying, so he called Wenzhao and asked him to contact Jiuying to find out what Black Owl had done recently and who Wancheng had seen. The next day, Luo Yan received a notice from Wei Fenghua that Ziguang Gaiyao asked him to go to the mecha upgrade warehouse. Luo Yan didn't bother to practice and immediately went into the upgrade warehouse. As soon as he entered the warehouse, he found that it was very different from the last time he came. There were several mechs parked in the warehouse. Black Thunder, Greedy Wolf, Orange Cat. The mechs of Hiheo and others were parked in the warehouse. Some students were operating various large equipment, busy modifying and upgrading, or holding tablets for testing and control. On the other side of the warehouse, there were various mecha parts and devices piled up into a mountain, and some even scattered on the metal deck next to it. After the new year, Ziguangaiao, whose head was getting cooler, still used a few strands of hair to cover the embarrassing middle of his head, wearing glasses, and loudly instructing students to modify Hiheo and his mecha. Because he was too absorbed in his work, he didn't notice Luo Yan until he came to him. Finally, Luo Yan coughed dryly, and the instructor turned around and immediately pulled Luo Yan to his office. Zio Luo, these days, the technical team and I have done a detailed data analysis of the Bian, and basically listed several upgrade directions. But you are about to participate in the big sports meeting. It is definitely too late to modify it now, and some equipment is not available in our college. So I called you here today to let you confirm, and then when your funds are in place, we will prepare the materials first. When you come back from the big sports meeting, you can immediately upgrade the Bian. Luo Yan nodded in agreement. Ziguangaiao said again. By the way, tell me about the budget first. If the budget is less than 50 million, I suggest that you don't move for the time being, because you can only use the minimum configuration, and even if you upgrade, you will have no advantage in the same level. It's better to continue to maintain the status quo. Luo Yan stretched out a finger. Ziguangaiao pulled down his glasses and took a look. 100 million. You have 100 million in funds. Luo Yan nodded. In his public account alone, there are more than 100 million work points. Han Dancing in Qingyang City has 50 million, plus the previous battle in Changping City, he earned more than 60 million. At this time, a budget of 100 million can be fully allocated. Ziguangaiao took a breath and said, if I didn't know you well, I would suspect that you are some rich second generation who came to the college to live a hard life. Okay, no problem. He picked up a walkie-talkie and shouted, Zio Luo plans to invest a budget of 100 million. So, boys, let go and do it. Luo Yan immediately saw the students in the upgrade warehouse looking at him in shock, and then all cheered. Ziguangaiao smiled and said, these guys can modify and upgrade the God level machine with their own hands. For those of them who are in the maintenance department, it is a rare practical experience. I thank you on their behalf. Without you, how can these guys touch the God level machine in the academy? He then handed over a tablet computer. This is the upgrade route I provided. Take a look. Luo Yan took it and read the information inside carefully. After all, he spent 100 million to exchange these things, so he must look at them carefully. Ziguangaiao's upgrade direction is divided into several parts. The most direct and crude one is to replace the heavy weapon level longsword of Bian with a divine weapon level 1. Secondly, he will make a fuss about the power, outer armor, and supercore matrix. But among them, one of the upgrade directions is to purchase a full set of control modules for the internal energy nodes of the mecha. According to the description, after installing this control module, the energy utilization rate of the mecha will be effectively improved. In addition, with this set of control modules, the mecha can exert greater power with the same power, and it can reduce the consumption of yuan to a certain extent. After reading it, Luo Yan made the decision immediately and then swiped his card to pay. With a ding, his bank card suddenly had more than 10 million work points left. Looking at the sharply decreasing number in the mobile phone message, Luo Yan couldn't help but sigh. Mechas really burn money. Chapter 438, Carrying a Burden. Leaving the mecha upgrade warehouse with a shrunken wallet, Luo Yan thought, I have to make money. Well, after returning from the big sports meeting, I will go to Yinwen base first, and go with Yubei to receive Liu Zio's assets in the underground city. Then Jiuying locator quickly set up the forbidden medicinal herb plantation in Qingyang City. Only then can I replenish the funds on my account. Luo Yan thought about it. There are really many things to do as a red ghost. After receiving Liu Zio's assets, I have to purchase a mecha simulation cabin, and then let Chen Fei select and guide the first batch of students. After I have students, I have to buy mechs, and I don't have to think about new models of mechs. I can only buy some old models from the black market, and the mechs that have been eliminated by major underground cities will be dealt with first. In this way, various supporting facilities must be available. Liu Zio has a similar facility in Yinwen Base, but the problem is that Yinwen Base is not close to Guangling, so Liu Yan needs to build a surface facility that is closer. His plan was to place the mecha facilities in the Coyote camp, not far from the underground city. The Coyote camp was less than 2 days away from Guangling. In the future, he would also need a ground base to fight against Tuanquin, so it was necessary to develop the Coyote camp into a Coyote base. As for the channels from which to purchase mechs, Liu Yan also had ideas. Dark Blood was engaged in the black market mecha trade. Their attitude at the night banquet that day was also okay. After Chen Fei came over, he could contact Yuzhen to see if he could get 1 or 2 old models of mechas from him. Liu Yan exhaled lightly. Whether it was building mecha supporting facilities, expanding the camp, or even purchasing mechas. Looking around, it was all money. 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 Stepping into the training hall, Liu Yan immediately saw a figure. He stood by the window, with his back to the door, standing tall, like a long sword pointing to the sky. Zeng. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the new city lord turned around. It seemed that the injury he had suffered in the misty canyon before had healed. He was full of energy, his face was ruddy, and his eyes were bright. Yes, you have reached the advanced level. I heard from Feng He that you have started practicing Blood Pagoda. You are much more capable than me. At least when I started practicing, I was not as brave and diligent as you. Zeng said loudly, with full of energy, that made Liu Yan's ears buzz. He was surprised and said, "Captain, have you made a breakthrough?" Zeng laughed, rarely showing his usual coldness, and nodded frankly, "I have made some progress recently." Liu Yan said, "I heard from Teacher Wei that you were injured." Zeng walked over. "Did the boundary wall erode? I heard that you also encountered it in the Battle of Changping." "Yes, I was eroded back then, but I was lucky enough to be able to drive a mecha. It's a pity for Feng He. To be honest, he likes those heavy and rough machines more than I do." Liu Yan was stunned. Teacher Wei also encountered boundary wall erode. Zeng looked at him and said, "Our generation was not like yours. We had all kinds of data and examples to refer to. Many things require us to explore. We are still lucky. The generation of Principal Pan Rinfeng paid a more painful price to explore the path of mechas against behemoths. It was a silent war. All the knowledge you have now, the examples and data you can refer to, were piled up by generations of mecha masters with their lives. In order to explore the limit of human beings' ability to withstand the erosion of the boundary wall, Feng He took the risk of letting his mecha's empathy rate reach 300%. This is the limit of the depth of empathy between humans and mechas without losing their lives. Now there is no need to use a driver to explore the depth of empathy, but no matter how we simulate, we can't exceed this limit. And the price Feng He paid for this is that he can no longer drive a mecha in this life. If he empathizes with the mecha again, he will die. In addition, he has a chronic disease and basically has to take medicine every day to control his condition. Listening to Zeng's words, Liu Yan felt heavy. Zeng smiled at this time. "Don't be sad. Someone has to carry the burden forward so that our next generation can live better. Although Feng He can no longer go to the battlefield, there is still me, and I will carry his share as well. If one day I fall down, then it's your turn." Liu Yan seemed to have a flame rising in his heart. He clenched his fists, his red eyes bright, and nodded vigorously. Zeng patted his shoulder and said, "I've heard about Gaolin's action in the old city. You're good, kid. The old captain is no pushover. His purple extreme thunder is one of the most powerful Tongsuan level techniques. You're pretty good to be able to escape unscathed after meeting him." After making his evaluation, Zeng sighed. "It's a pity that the old captain and I have a disagreement that has led to this point. It's really sad. He won't kill you for no reason. It should be part of some kind of transaction. Now, Gaolin is a distinguished guest of Luoxian IE. This means that someone must have made some kind of deal with Luo Xianyi in exchange for Gaolin's action. Luo Yang breathed a sigh of relief. Then I understand. He then told Dizeng about the night banquet. Dizeng nodded and asked, what are your plans next? Luo Yan said without hesitation, to eradicate the Black Owl, Wan Cheng must die. Dizeng did not object. That's fine. The Black Owl organization is engaged in various extraordinary transactions, including special stimulants. The Ministry of Security has been wanting to move against them for a long time, but for various reasons, it has been delayed until now. Just go ahead and do it. I will go to the old city often in the next few days. See if I can meet some old friends and reminisce about the past. With Dizeng's words, Luo Yan's confidence doubled. That night, Redgate Jude building. In the quiet room, a bowl lotus formed by the condensation of smoke and haze gradually took shape in the air. The lotus leaves of this lotus are round like shields. The color of the flower is pink like colorful clouds, and the petals are countless. At this time, Yang Tao called out softly, and the lotus transformed by the smoke and haze disappeared into the air. The girl wiped the sweat off her face and looked at Luo Yan. Teacher, is that so? Luo Yang nodded gently. This is a move in the 100 flowers killing boxing manual, called Pink Cloud. It looks extremely weak, but when the lotus hits the enemy, the petals will explode and fly, killing the target. It is considered a relatively good fighting skill. You have just been promoted to the 3rd level of the elementary level. It is not bad to be able to take shape. Next, you have to practice diligently until you understand the meaning of this punch, and then it will be considered a great success. Encouraged, the girl was excited and nodded repeatedly. Luo Yan let her practice by herself and left the quiet room. Wen Zhao came over. Master, there is news from Xing Feng. Chapter 439. Sending Boss Wan to his final resting place. Wen Zhao took out a cell phone and handed it to Luo Yan. Luo Yan took it out and saw a video on the phone. It looked like it was captured from a surveillance camera on the street. In the video, a car was parked outside the Chunming tea house on the long street. The car door opened and people came out one after another. There was a tall young man and an old man with a hunchback, wearing black clothes and black shoes. Wen Zhao at the side said, one of the two men is Luo Nangsing, the son of Luo Xianyi, a big man in the city, and the other is the old man who ambushed you on the long street that night. His name is Gaolin, and he is the former commander of the Guangling Mechanized Corps. Wen Zhao said with a beaming eyebrow, seeming quite excited. Xing Feng said that on the night of the 8th day of the new year, the two men went to Chunming Tea House. Master, this Chunming Tea House is the headquarters of the Black Owl. After explaining, Wen Zhao continued, after Luo Nangsing and Gaolin came to Wancheng, Wancheng started to move around. In the past few days, he met a lot of people, and just today, he moved forward his birthday, which was originally after the Lantern Festival, and held a birthday banquet at Jiuying Tea House today, inviting many prominent figures in the old city. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly in the mask. Birthday banquet? Go, call Iron Horse over. Let Jiuying prepare it. Let's go to celebrate Mr. Wan's birthday, too. Wen Zhao raised his eyebrows, and his whole body felt like it was electrified, with all the hair on the back of his neck standing up. Wen Zhao heard murderous intent in Luo Yan's words birthday celebration, and thought that Wancheng's birthday banquet might not be held tonight, and it might even turn into a death anniversary. 9 o'clock in the evening. Wutong Street, where Chunming Tea House is located, is full of various vehicles. Fortunately, a big battle broke out on another street yesterday, causing the long street to be completely destroyed, and attracting the Ministry of Security in the Guangling Corps, so that tonight, there are very few people going out in the old city. Otherwise, with so many cars parked on Wutong Street, from the beginning to the end of the street, I'm afraid it will cause complaints from residents. Chunming Tea House is decorated with lights tonight, and 2 big red lanterns are hung outside the gate. The receptionist at the door is smiling with a stiff face, and he still has to welcome guests one by one. The guests who came to the tea house tonight were all well-known figures in the old city, and some were able to sit at the round table in the square at the New Year's Eve banquet. The tea house hall was full of shadows. Hundreds of tables were occupied. On the main seat in the middle of the front, Wan Cheng's face was flushed, wearing a long red dress with a ruai pattern, and every wrinkle on his face seemed to glow. On a temporary stage behind him, a big show had already begun, with clanging and bursts of gong music, filled with a festive atmosphere. Boss Wan, I wish you a long life, happiness as vast as the East Sea, and a long life. Mr. Wan, congratulations, I wish you a bright future, and long life. Wan Cheng nodded continuously during the birthday congratulations. Ever since he promised the Luo family to use his influence at the Lantern Festival to create some trouble for the new city lord, he has been making many contacts in recent days, contacting old friends, and bringing the birthday banquet forward. The purpose is to use the opportunity of today's banquet to arrange the details of the Lantern Festival uprising. Although Wan Cheng was smiling, he was a little dissatisfied in his heart. Last night, he finally found out that the red ghost of the Red Gate appeared in the old city. He immediately notified Gaolin, and the old man also took action, but the red ghost still ran away. Although Gaolin was in the tea house tonight to prevent the red ghost from coming to his house for revenge, but Wan Cheng still felt unhappy. He always felt like a thorn in his throat until the red ghost died. At this time, Gaolin, who was still dressed in black, sat at an inconspicuous table in the corner. The old man crossed his legs, took out a tin cigarette box, slowly rolled the tobacco with paper, and then lit it, and sucked it deeply. These tobaccos were all made by him, and some medicines that can replenish ki and nourish the essence were added to them. He was seriously injured when he was young, and he was left with a root of illness. As a result, his cultivation level did not improve but regressed. Although he has reached the 3rd level of Tangsuan now, he knows very well that he cannot let go and dare not use up his cultivation level. That would trigger the old injury, and it might get out of hand. Otherwise, last night, he wouldn't have to use 50% of his strength to test first, and then use 70% to kill the enemy. If he hadn't been injured, he would have used all his strength, and the 10 red ghosts wouldn't have been able to escape. However, the leader of the Red Ghosts gang not only cultivated to the advanced realm, but also possessed unique skills and secret methods, which was really unexpected. Otherwise, Gaolin was just a high-level cultivator. Even if he only used 70% of his strength, he would have been sure to kill the target. The old man took a puff of smoke, letting the medicine in it enter his lungs with the smoke, and then spread to various parts of the body to soothe his old injuries. Suddenly, he stopped, his eyes slightly stern. His sight swept across the hall and fell outside the tea house. Outside the gate of Chunming Tea House, the receptionist with a numb smile on her face suddenly saw cars driving in from the intersection of Chengji and stopped near the tea house. Then the car doors opened one after another, and figures came out of the cars. Among them, a man wearing a wooden mask was the leader. These people did not bring gifts, but rifles. They came in a fierce manner. Tonight, every building and every dark alley on the long street was already filled with Black Owl people. At this moment, a pair of eyes saw the masked man and immediately threw away the cigarette in his hand. Oh no, quickly inform Mr. Wan, the people from Hanman are coming. Then, the man blew a whistle. Then, big men came out of the buildings and the shadows and greeted them. Luo Yan kept his pace. Wen Zhao, who was walking beside him, shouted, Hangman is here to celebrate Mr. Wan's birthday. Who dares to stop us? As he spoke, the fake Taoist quickly formed a hand seal, and suddenly a tornado rushed into the sky in front of the tea house door, sweeping away the Black Owl gang members blocking the door, and lifting up the skirts of all the reception ladies. On Luo Yan's right, Wei Junai, with a deep gaze and a cold expression, also rushed forward, and with one arm behind his back, a flash of knife light suddenly slashed forward, slashing several big men who were lucky enough not to be blown away by the tornado, and making them run for their lives. So, in front of Luo Yan, there was no more obstruction to the door of the tea house. In the tea house, hearing the movement, Wan Cheng first glanced at Gaolin, and when he saw the man behind him nodding slightly, he groaned and strode towards the door. He saw the red ghost of the Red Gate, with his hands behind his back, climbed the stone steps in front of the door, and looked into his eyes. The other part, his red eyes were red in the mask, and he was full of murderous intent, which made Wan Cheng's paws shrink. After calming down, Wan Cheng said, Mr. Chigi, what does this mean? Luo Yan said indifferently in the mask. I heard that it is your birthday today, so I came to congratulate you. Beside Wan Sheng, the good old man Uncle Ya came out and tried to smooth things over. Mr. Chiggy is here, so what are you waiting for? Come in, come in. Someone said, since it's a birthday celebration, what about the gift? You can't come to celebrate my dad's birthday empty-handed, right? The person who spoke was Wan Sheng's son, a young man in his early 20s. Of course there is a gift. Luo Yan didn't even look at Wan Sheng's son, but just stared at Wan Sheng. I came here specially tonight to send Boss Wan off to the afterlife with a smile on my face. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 440. Anyone who does not leave within the time limit will be killed. Send Boss Wan to the grave with a smile. As soon as these words came out, the whole Chunming tea house was in an uproar. Wan Sheng's face was extremely ugly. He thought that today was his birthday party, and the red ghost wanted to send him to the grave with a smile. Wouldn't that mean he would turn his birthday into his death day? He hadn't gotten angry yet. The gang members of the Black Owl and his son were already pointing at Luo Yan and cursing. What did you say? Say it again, if you have the guts. You are so bold. Today is my father's birthday. How dare you talk nonsense? All kinds of voices rang out everywhere. Uncle Ya saw this situation and felt that this matter could not be resolved anyway. The old man retreated little by little and retreated into the crowd. The other guests also talked among themselves. Who is the masked man? He's so arrogant. How long have you been out? Haven't you heard of the Red Gate Red Devil? I heard that at the New Year's Eve banquet, the Red Gate suppressed Boss Wan and others so much that they couldn't raise their heads. That night, many people died in Temple Street. The cleanup took a whole night, and there was still a smell of blood the next day. Good man, this is too arrogant, even more arrogant than when I was young. In the crowd, Gaolin sat at the table without moving, smiling, and finishing the cigarette in his hand, and then he was about to get up. At this time, someone else sat down at his table. This person was wearing a hooded sportswear, and the hood was on his head. At this time, he took it off, revealing a face that was not young, but with cold lines. Gaolin's body stiffened immediately. The man picked up the teapot, poured a cup of tea for Gaolin, and pushed it over. He said calmly, "Old Captain, long time no see." At the door of the tea house, the knife light broke through the air, cutting off the hands that dared to point at Luo Yan. Screams broke out immediately. Wan Sheng was quick-witted and reached out to pull his son back, thus saving him from having his hand cut off. Wei Junai stood beside Luo Yan, holding a knife in one hand, and looked around coldly. He looked as if he would chop anyone who reached out his hand again. There were sounds of people sucking in air from all around, and the guests retreated one after another to avoid being implicated. At this time, Wan Sheng laughed in anger. The Red Gate is so powerful. I don't know how I, Wan, have offended Mr. Chiggy. The Red Gate actually wants to cause trouble at Wan's birthday party. Wen Zhao chuckled and said, "Don't you know what you, Wan, have done? Last night, our grandfather was attacked on the street. We have asked Xing Feng to investigate. The people who attacked our grandfather were sent by you, Wan." There was another uproar. Uncle Ya looked at Wan Sheng. The old man had a complicated expression, which finally turned into a sigh. Wan Sheng said calmly, "You are slandering me. You said that it was done by someone named Wan, but do you have any evidence?" Wen Zhao was about to say something, but when he saw Luo Yan raised his hand, he immediately shut up. Luo Yan, in the mask, looked at Wan Sheng and said word by word, "Today I'm not here to argue with you, but to ask you to leave." Wei Junai followed and shouted, "This is the grudge between the Red Gate and the Black Owl. Those who have nothing to do please stay away. You have 1 minute to leave. Those who do not leave after the time limit will be regarded as enemies of the Red Gate. Kill without mercy." The last sentence was said to the gang members behind. Suddenly, a voice rang out outside the gate, "Yes." Hearing this, the guests turned pale. A fat man came out hesitantly and bowed to Wan Sheng. Boss 1, I just remembered that I have something important to do tonight. Liu will take his leave first. After saying that, the fat man wiped the sweat from his forehead, shrank his head, and carefully passed by the Red Gate and others. The Red Gate gang members behind immediately made way for the fat man to pass. Seeing this, the other guests hurriedly withdrew, and some even ran away in a hurry without saying hello to Wancheng. In the end, even the leaders of the organization such as Uncle Ya found an excuse to leave. Immediately, in the tea house, only the people of Wancheng and Gaolin's table in the corner were left. At this time, only 50 seconds had passed. Wen Zhao chuckled and said to the other members of the Black Owl gang, as long as you surrender, we in the Red Gate will not hold you accountable and let you leave. Otherwise. He didn't finish his words, but at this time, figures appeared on the building opposite the Jiuying main tea house. The people of the Iron Horse came. With Luo Yan's investment, the Iron Horse has increased its personnel and even replaced a batch of equipment. Now it is strong and well equipped. Once it occupied the commanding heights, the black muzzles of the guns pointed at the members of the Black Owl below. Suddenly, the members of the Black Owl gang felt insecure. They saw that the Iron Horse not only used automatic rifles, there were also 2 people carrying rocket launchers. With such firepower, what would the Black Owl do with their heads? In the tea house, when Wen Zhao finished speaking, exactly 1 minute had passed. So Luo Yan walked forward. The blood transformation sutra began to work, and a blood-red glow shone around him, illuminating all directions. Luo Yan did not walk fast, but every step he took left a shallow, but clear footprint on the floor of the tea house. Wancheng was sweating on his back. He could not help but look at Gaolin, but saw the old man sitting on a chair, with his legs crossed and sipping tea. He was talking and laughing happily with a strange man in sportswear. What are you doing? Stop. I order you to stop. Wancheng's son suddenly raised his hand, and there was a pistol in his hand. As soon as he pointed at Luo Yan, a cold light flashed, and the young man saw that his hand was broken at the root. He was stunned for a moment, then his expression twisted, and a scream came to his mouth. His throat was cold again. Wei Junai drew his knife and put it away, watching indifferently as Wancheng's son covered his neck with one hand. His eyes bulged and fell backwards. Shu Wen. Wancheng was furious. Without waiting for Gaolin to make a move, he shouted angrily, and his Yuanli burst out. A tiger-like beast appeared around him, with a pitch-black body and eyes emitting a green and fierce light. Then he stretched out his hands, his 5 fingers like claws, surrounded by a trace of black and green aura, and grabbed Luo Yan. Luo Yan raised his hands. The Huan long sword jumped into his hands at some point. There was a sudden thunder between him and Wancheng. A flash of lightning crossed the sky. Wancheng's 10 fingers flew out first, and then from his shoulders to his waist, a large cloud of blood mist suddenly exploded. He stopped. His eyeballs rolled. Then he fell to the ground, and his red long clothes became more and more dazzling in the gradually spreading blood. The tea house was silent. Luo Yan put down the long sword and looked around. The gang members of the Black Owl looked at each other, and then someone took the lead and threw their weapons to the ground, and then the others followed suit and surrendered. Luo Yan glanced at the table at the back of the tea house, turned around and left. Then the people from the Red Gate began to leave. At this time, someone in the crowd hurried out and caught up with Luo Yan. Mr. Chigi, my name is Dingen, and I manage the business of this Black Owl. Please allow me to report to you. Chapter 441 Top Students. It's the Lantern Festival. Many lanterns are arranged in the underground city square in preparation for tonight's activities. In the past 3 years, Guangling City has not had any celebration programs. After all, every penny and every bit of energy must be used to the best effect. But this year is a little different. First, the new team in the underground city wants to use the opportunity of the Lantern Festival to announce a major event of the whole nation practicing visualization. Secondly, they also want to use this opportunity to adjust people's moods. Otherwise they will be tense all day and easily have mental problems. So it can be imagined that the Lantern Festival at night must be very lively and fun. Unfortunately, Luo Yan didn't have the opportunity to experience it. Because today, they are leaving for the venue of the big sports meeting, Jinch City. Sitting in the school bus, Luo Yan looked at the lantern square outside the window and heard Bei say in the back seat, "What a pity, if only we could leave a day later." Hiheo, who had been sitting in the front with his eyes closed, heard the words. "This kind of activity is so boring. What's so good about the lanterns?" Sujiyu, who was chewing gum and blowing bubbles beside him, sighed. "Are you made of stone? You don't understand romance at all." Hiheo laughed. "Can romance be eaten as a meal, or can it fight off giant beasts?" The passengers in this car are all students in the academy who have their own mechs or have practical experience in mechs. That is the so-called top class. Every academy has a top class. The students in it are the treasures of the academy and are weapons used to fight against the top classes of other academies. Therefore, what they are responsible for in the big sports meeting is different from other students. So the academy puts them together for easy management. At this time, the convoy has left the underground city and drove onto the surface. On the 15th day of the Lantern Festival, the surface is still cold. The winter in the north is very long. Even in February, the temperature on the surface is still cold. And when spring comes, the ice and snow melt, and there will be late spring cold, which is freezing cold. So after the giant beast disaster, every winter is a great test for the survivors on the ground. Many people did not die from the giant beasts or parasites, but died from low temperatures. Of course, it is difficult for the students in the underground city to experience it firsthand. Just like now, the air conditioner in the school bus keeps the room temperature in the car at around 22 degrees, and you can't feel the cold at all. In the underground city, the existence of the constant temperature system makes the underground city like spring all year round, and there will be no situation where residents are frozen to death. It's so cold outside. Bei pressed his hands on the car window, looking at the snow outside the window, and sighed softly. "I really want to ski. I haven't played for many years." Luo Yan looked out the window and didn't feel anything. He didn't know how to ski and had never played it, but he was good at throwing snowballs. "I still remember, when I was a child, I played snowball fights with 3 or 5 playmates at the door of my house." Luo Yan never lost. No matter whether it was a boy or a girl, everyone had to eat a few of his snowballs, and then went home with a shabby face to complain. Thinking of the past, Luo Yan's mouth corners unconsciously rose. At this time, applause broke out. It was Wei Fenghua, the Dean of Studies, who was in charge of leading the team this time, and was also the consultant for their top students. "Okay, everyone look here, and concentrate on listening to me." Wei Fenghua coughed a few times and smiled. "This sports meet is divided into 2 venues. One is the main venue, and the other is a desperate battlefield. Third-year students like Hiheo will go to the designated desperate battlefield for training. At that time, they will be led to the battlefield by a special instructor, so we won't discuss it here. What I want to talk about is a second-year and first-year students. According to the model of previous years, the sports meet will have 2 major events, college confrontation and forbidden area actual combat. In the college confrontation session, each college and each grade will send 3 5-person teams to compete with the opponent using a 3-game 2-win system. If it's a tie, then play another game until the winner is decided. Since it's a 3-game 2-win system, adjustments will be made to the distribution of team members when the teams are divided. Generally, it will be divided into 2 main teams and 1 reserve team. There are also examples of colleges that evenly distribute the main players to 3 teams in order to avoid dispersing strength. As for the Forbidden Land combat, it is a team competition. Each grade will have 5 mechs to fight. The time-based scoring system will be used. The ranking will be determined according to the scores within the specified time. Finally, the final score of the college will be obtained by combining the 2 events of the college confrontation and the Forbidden Land combat. At this point, Wei Fenghua stopped and let the students digest the information and ask questions. After everyone had no questions, he continued. "Now I will announce the list of the main players of the first and second grades in the college confrontation event. Please raise your hands if your name is called. First, the first grade. The main players are Luo Yan, Lin Wei, Li Boheng, Zheng Shan, Li Zi, Shen Yu, and Lin Cheng. The main players of the second grade are Bei, Liu Ruohan, Xiaoping, Jiuying, Xiaonan, and Zhaofeng. For the time being, we will follow the grouping method of 2 main players and 1 deputy. If we encounter special circumstances, we will make adjustments. Soon, the main players of each grade were divided into 2 groups. Luo Yang continued to be in the same team with Li Boheng and Zheng Shan. The teams with insufficient numbers and the reserve team will be selected from other first-year students. After the teams were divided, Weni Fenghua continued. In addition, regarding the opponents, the information of each college has been sent to your mobile phones. You can check it out when you have time. You need to pay attention to the 3 colleges of Xianan, Yujing and Yingshan. These 3 colleges have almost always taken the top 3 places in the major sports games over the years. The students who come out of these 3 colleges every year are very good. Among the current Xiangang Dragon Riders, some are students of these 3 colleges. I hope that in the competition, we won't run into these 3 colleges in the first round. Weni Fenghua paused, then smiled and said, but if you run into Xianan College, you should go all out. It doesn't matter if you lose. As long as you show your momentum, the principal will be happy to reward you out of his own pocket. Well, this is what the principal asked me to convey to you. Luo Yan's mouth twitched slightly, thinking of the stone tablet with the 4-character sword pointing to Xianan written on it at the entrance of the college, and couldn't help but guess the relationship between Basin College and Xianan College. 2 days later, on the school bus, Weni Fenghua said, we will arrive at the main venue this afternoon. Tomorrow is the opening ceremony. There will be an electronic lottery to determine the opponents of the college competition. The dean was talking when suddenly there was a rumble above the school bus, like thunder. Luo Yan looked out the window, his pupils suddenly dilated slightly. In the sky, a black gap twisted and turned, pointing to the distance. Yanfu Space. Chapter 442, Young Man's Passion. Yambu Space. It's the Yambu Space. It appeared again, only 1 branch. Fortunately, in the school buses, whether it was Luo Yan's top students or the students on other school buses, they all crowded to the windows. Luo Yang happened to be sitting by the window and saw the most clearly. After the black branch in the sky extended to the distance, not long after, the Yambu space expanded and opened, and from that dark alien space, 2 dark objects descended. Giant beast. As soon as it left the Yambu space, the giant beast immediately expanded in 3 dimensions, quickly gained volume, fell like a meteorite, and landed safely on the ground under the energy protection of the Yambu space. The earth shook, and billowing smoke rose. Then, from the smoke and dust, a giant bat with a single horn on its head and a giant bull with a pitch black body and dark blue lines on its body, like thunder rushed out. Gudao. Shaking the bull. One is of lower level, the other is of middle level. After the 2 giant beasts rushed out of the thick smoke, they headed towards a city in the distance. Suddenly, a helicopter flew up in that city. Apparently, there were survivors in the city. Deep in Luo Yan's eyes, circles of fire appeared, and his Wu Wang burning eyes was activated. Although Shenzang could not let him get closer to see the situation in the helicopter, it was not difficult to see that there were biological grey lights in the helicopter. Moreover, there were 2 or 3 people hanging on the landing gear that was raised straight up. Oh my god. Shen Yu, who looked ordinary, picked up the telescope and looked out. There are too many people in that helicopter. It's overloaded. And there are people on the landing gear. It can't fly at all. Oh no. Someone in the cabin came out with a gun. Gunshots were faintly heard from a distance, and Luo Yan saw that the biological grey lights holding the landing gear fell down and fell to the ground. In a moment, those biological grey lights disappeared. Dead. Shen Yu said with a heavy expression, and then shouted, the giant beast is coming. This time, without a telescope or a divine treasure, Luo Yang could see that the Gu Eagle flew into the city and flew towards the helicopter, like an eagle catching a bug. Just as the helicopter was about to fly away, it was smashed to pieces by the Gu Eagle. Some of the people inside jumped out of the helicopter in advance, and some did not have time to act, and were deformed and broken by the giant beast along with the helicopter. Even those who jumped out of the helicopter were lucky enough to land on the rooftop of the high-rise building below, and broke their limbs. The unlucky one screamed and fell to the ground, turning into a meat paste. At this time, Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly. He saw small biological grey lights pouring out of the building one by one. It was obvious that the survivors in the city were going to flee. There are people in the city. There are so many people. Can they get away? I can't bear to watch. In the school bus, Zheng Shan suddenly looked at Wei Fenghua. Teacher, can we go to save them? Yes, teacher. We have mechs and can repel the monsters. The students said one after another. They were young and full of passion, so how could they bear to watch people die without helping? Wei Fenghua thought for a while and said, are you sure? If we carry out a rescue, it may delay a lot of time. We may miss tomorrow's opening ceremony and miss a lot of things. The students were stunned. At this time, Li Boheng pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and said, but we learned to drive mechs and become mecha masters. Isn't it just to fight the behemoths? Lin Cheng, who had a hideous scar on his face, also walked out and said, participating in the big sports meeting is important, but if I see the disaster in front of me and don't stop it, I'm afraid I will have nightmares every night when I go to bed in the future. Jiuying, a sophomore, also said, teacher, let us go. Wei Fenghua smiled, since you have decided, I won't stop you. Okay, I'll take this opportunity to teach you a lesson. He didn't say what lesson, just said, sophomores Jiuying, Zionan, Xiaoping, Zhaofeng, the four of you will be divided into two groups as the main force to fight the behemoths. First year students Li Boheng, Zheng Shan, Lin Cheng, and Li Zi. The four of you will join the sophomore teams and assist them. Lin Wei and Shen Yu, you are responsible for protecting and guiding the survivors to evacuate. Finally, Wei Fenghua looked at Luo Yan. You go to scout the enemy. Don't attack unless their lives are in danger. Those who are not named, stay in the car with me. Move. Luo Yan stood up, got off the car immediately, and ran to his mecha carrier. Judging from the candidates Wei Fenghua named, this operation is obviously to give those students who have little chance to participate in actual combat a chance to practice. Luo Yan assigned a role of lifeguard. Students like Bei and Hehao, who have participated in many actual combats, did not have the opportunity to play. Soon, Luo Yan drove the Bian towards the giant beast in the distance. Behind him, Li Boheng's ranger, Zheng Shan's King Kong, and other students' mechas followed closely. At this time, the two teams responsible for fighting the giant beast began to move towards the direction of the shaking cow and the Gudiao. Luo Yan followed them to support them when they were defeated. Lin Wei's red moth and Shen Yu's mecha went to the city to protect and guide the survivors to evacuate. At this time, Li Zi's mecha was running. Probably because of the captain's order, the mecha stopped on a highway in the city. Its feet rubbed the ground, crushing the cracked road surface into pieces and pushing up a small hill. Then it raised its sniper rifle, pointed it at the Gudiao in the sky, and opened fire. As the gunshots echoed in the city, the left wing of the giant bird in the sky suddenly burst into blood mist, and countless feathers sprayed out and fell down. The giant bird let out a wail, lost its balance, and fell to the ground quickly. It crashed into a building, crushing the broken buildings into pieces, and couldn't get up for a while. Taking advantage of this time, the three mechas led by Jiuying rushed over to kill the Gudiao when it lost its ability to fly. On the other side, the team led by Xiaoping faced the Shaking Bull, but it was not so smooth. After all, the Shaking Bull is a mid-level behemoth, and it is huge in size and amazing in strength. Li Boheng's ranger kept firing, but unfortunately for the thick-skinned Rocking Bull, the firepower of the ranger could only injure it at best, and it was a relatively minor injury, but it could not kill it. Even though Xiaoping and his men's mechas also joined the attack, the Rocking Bull still rushed forward under the firepower. It has the characteristics of divine power, not to mention the light mechas like the ranger. Even the heavy mechas like the King Khan will be pushed away if they are hit. Xiaoping immediately ordered to disperse. The Rocking Bull did not hit any mechas, and immediately roared, drawing thunder and attacking four mechas. It seems that they will not be able to get rid of this mid-level behemoth so quickly, but for a while, there should be no danger. Luo Yan chose to stand by and watch. At the same time, the two red moth mechas also entered the city and came to the place where a large number of survivors gathered. Chapter 443. Another way to solve the problem. The city was in chaos. The city was not small and was divided into several urban areas. The roads in the city were like a spider web, and there was a canal that divided the city into the east and west banks. The survivors were mainly concentrated on the west bank. There were many bridges connecting the east and west banks, but many of them became the memory and history of the city and the giant disaster and the subsequent series of disasters. Now only one bridge is still possible, but this bridge was obviously controlled by a force in the city. When the survivors drove various vehicles to the bridge, they were stopped. They were told that they would only cross the bridge after some important people left. So a conflict broke out. But the conflict ended quickly. The reason was simple. The other side had guns, more than one. After a burst of shooting and lying down more than a dozen survivors, the survivors were obviously in the majority, but because there was no command and leadership, they were like a pile of loose sand, and could only look at the bridge and sigh. Here, blocked by high-rise buildings, the survivors could not see the giant beasts, let alone the mechs. They could only hear the roars and the roars of guns and cannons coming from afar. While many people were guessing who was fighting the giant beast, the ground began to shake. A little girl with pigtails and a dirty face was hugging her father's neck in fear. Suddenly, the little girl saw a huge figure coming out from behind a building in the distance. It was a red mecha with a slender shape, like a woman. The main color of the paint was vermilion, with white lines distributed, and there were two pieces of armor on the back that looked like insect wings. It was a red moth. Dad, look, a big robot. The girl with pigtails pointed at the mecha. Her father turned around and saw the mecha and suddenly became excited. Look, everyone, the mecha is here. We are saved. 4 years have passed since the natural disaster, and these survivors have either seen or heard about the existence of mechs. Knowing that mechs are humanoid weapons used to fight giant beasts. Now seeing the red moth, they are naturally overjoyed. In the cab of the red moth, Lin Wei saw people gathering on the shore, but not crossing the bridge. She was puzzled and turned on the mecha's external speaker and said, "Why don't you cross the river? Hurry up and get out of here. My classmates are fighting the monster now, to buy you some time. Hurry up and act." Hearing Lin Wen's words, the survivors looked towards the bridgehead. There, a man with a mustache had cold sweat on his forehead, but he still raised his rifle and shouted, "Don't move. Our boss is coming. Don't forget that you guys are protected by our starfire. Without us, you would have become the monster's faces. Now that something has happened, of course our starfire people have to go first. Whoever dares to come over, I will kill him." As they were talking, gunshots were heard in the distance. People looked and saw a convoy arriving on the way. The convoy had two long trailers with tall carriages that obviously exceeded the height limit of the bridge and were stopped by the height limit frame of the bridge. Now, someone is dismantling the height limit frame to allow the trucks to pass, but it is obviously not something that can be solved in a short time. So the survivors accused one after another. "Are you kidding me? We are still dismantling the height limit now. Isn't this going to waste everyone's time? The monster is about to catch up, or you should let us go first." At this time, a figure climbed onto a long trailer. It was a tall and burly man. He raised a rifle and fired at the crowd, scaring people to retreat screaming and leaving a clearing. The man yelled at the top of his lungs, "You rubbish, what are you making a fuss about? I tell you, if I can't leave today, you guys can't even think about leaving. If these bastards dare to come up and make trouble again, kill them all." One by one, the big men jumped off the car, raised their rifles, pointed them at the civilians, and forced them back. At this time, a shadow appeared above the convoy, and a mecha came nearby. Shen Yu's voice rang out on the mecha. "It's already this time. What are you still dawdling about? Hurry up and cross the bridge." The man on the truck yelled, "Where are you from again? Since you have a mecha, quickly get rid of the giant beasts behind us, and we don't have to leave." The mecha raised its hand and pointed to the sky. "Look above your head. The Yamafu space has not disappeared, and giant beasts may continue to be deployed in this area at any time. It's not safe here." The voice fell. Suddenly, gunshots rang out behind Shen Yu's mecha, and the man standing on the long trailer on the ground, along with the truck, was blown to pieces by bullets specially designed for giant beasts. Several shots rang out one after another. The long trailer and the Starfire vehicle behind were all exploded and shattered. People screamed and fled. When the explosion stopped and the gunshots stopped, they saw that it was the red body that fired the gun. Then Lin Wen's voice rang out from the red moth. The problem has been solved. Can you leave now? In the cab, Shen Yu sweated a few times. He had never expected that Lin Wen would solve the problem in this way. Seeing that his boss and the convoy were shot away by the mechs, the mustache on the bridge did not dare to stop them anymore. He quickly asked people to remove the roadblocks and let the survivors pass. Finally, the survivors crossed the bridge one after another and headed to the other side. It was evening. A long line of cars was running on the land. On the left and right sides of the line of cars, a number of mechs were walking in the wilderness like giants, protecting the survivors as they moved. In the cab of the Bayan, Wen Fenghua's voice rang out on the communication channel. There is a surface base ahead. I have contacted them, and they have agreed to temporarily accept these survivors. Let's rest near the base and set off tomorrow. No one objected to the Dean's decision. So at nightfall, the survivors came to a surface base and temporarily found a place to live. The next day, as the college convoy was ready to go, cars drove out of the base and arrived at the college camp. There were many cars coming out of the base, and a large number of survivors surrounded the camp. Inside, several elected representatives climbed onto the cars and shouted to the college camp. Everyone from Basin College, thank you very much for everything you did yesterday. In addition, we heard from the people at the base that you are from the underground city. It's safe there, people have jobs, and don't have to worry about 3 meals a day. Can you take us with you? We have plenty of strength, and we can do any work. Wen Fenghua walked out, slightly boosted his energy, and then said, I'm sorry, everyone, we can't help you with your request. We are just teachers and students of an academy, and we have no right to make any decisions for the underground city. In addition, the space in the underground city is limited, and there are not many residents that can be accommodated. The number of residents in the underground city now far exceeds the limit that the city can accommodate. There is really no way to accept you anymore. The crowd was quiet. Suddenly someone rushed out and shouted, Why? Why don't you accept us? There are only a few of us. You have already exceeded the capacity. What does it matter if you accept a few more of us? Chapter 444, Letting Go. Wen Fenghua's eyes dimmed slightly, but she still smiled. I said the same thing. We are just teachers and students of the academy. We have no right to make decisions for the underground city. Everyone, we still have to hurry. You should go back quickly. Hearing Wen Fenghua say this, the people outside the camp were unhappy, especially the leaders. A man with tape wrapped around his glasses raised his hand and shouted, Don't listen to him. He is just fooling us honest people. A woman climbed onto the roof of the car and shouted, That's right. Look at what they wear and eat. They are better than us. Obviously, life in the underground city is better than ours. They are just afraid that we will go there and rob them. A middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s shook his head and said, We are all compatriots. We should help each other. Are you just going to watch us live in misery? The crowd was noisy. Among the survivors, a girl of 15 or 16 looked at the middle-aged man next to her. Dad, why are they like this? They just helped us yesterday. Isn't it too much to ask them to do this now? The middle-aged man sighed and smiled bitterly. There's nothing we can do. Everyone wants to live without fear. Now that we see hope, who would give up? At this time, someone else jumped out and said, Everyone, let's unite. If they don't take us to the underground city, we won't leave. Yes, we won't leave. We won't leave. Wen Fenghua was still smiling, but his eyes were getting deeper and deeper. When he was about to give an order, it suddenly became dark above his head. Then the ground shook. Wen Fenghua raised his head and saw that Bayan had started up at some point and was striding towards him. The man with tape wrapped around his glasses shrank back into the crowd little by little and shouted at the same time, Don't be afraid, everyone. They are just scaring people and dare not do anything to us. People were hesitant and frightened, but they were still unwilling to leave like this. At this time, Bayan stepped heavily on the ground, causing the ground to shake continuously, causing a large number of survivors in front of the camp to fall down, but the man with glasses did not fall down. Then Bian swung his long sword and swept across the ground, stirring up a large wave of stones and carving a huge gully on the ground. Then Luo Yan's cold voice rang out from the mech's external speaker, "Those who cross the line will be killed." The word kill was full of murderous aura. People finally calmed down, and then some shook their heads and sighed, and some cried bitterly, returning to the base like zombies with all kinds of helplessness. After the survivors left, the college convoy left the camp. On the way, in the school bus, the students were in low spirits, and the top students were no exception. Zheng Shan smiled bitterly. "Actually, I can understand why they did that, but even if I understand, I still feel very uncomfortable. However, I'm uncomfortable not because they are ungrateful, but because I have no ability to help them." Li Boheng, who was sitting next to him, patted his shoulder to comfort him. Lizzie pushed her thick glasses, looked at Luo Yan, and whispered to Lin Cheng beside her, "I admire Luo Yan very much. In that situation, his approach was very correct and straightforward. I also thought of doing so at the time, but I hesitated and did not dare to act on my own." Lin Cheng nodded slightly. People who have been to the battlefield are different. After letting the students discuss it for a while, Wen Fenghua came out and said, "This is the lesson I want to teach you. When we are on the surface, we must learn to let go. We can do our best and follow our hearts to help others. But when the other party makes demands that exceed our capabilities, we must decisively cut off, abandon, and leave. Just like just now. Everyone has the right to pursue a better life, so the survivors have done nothing wrong. But the demands they have made have exceeded our capabilities. What we can do is to cut it off immediately. This is good for both us and them. You must remember that this world is neither fair nor fair. You have to pay for what you get. Just like you, although you live a better life than the surface, you have heavier responsibilities than the survivors. Their responsibility is to survive, and your responsibility is to let them survive and live better and better. So, again, letting go does not make you become ruthless and indifferent people, but it makes you understand where the limits of your abilities are. Leaving is to be able to help more people when you come back next time." These words echoed in other school buses and all vehicles. Students and college staff heard them and kept them in mind. Jinj City. The largest underground city among the 18 cities in the north. It is also the city where the giant beast strategic palace is located. This huge city has a rigorous structure. The main urban area Beacon Fire is in the center, and there are 4 other urban areas in the southeast, southwest, west, and north, named Zhaoshan, Iron Clothes, Qianlang and Jinlin respectively, guarding the main city. In this city, the 3-dimensional network of roads, rivers, light rail and cable cars makes the city's transportation extend in all directions and travel is very convenient. The 3-year Grand Sports Meeting was held in Jinj City this year. At this time, as the main venue, it is also the venue for the first part of the Grand Sports Meeting, the college competition. In the White Horse Stadium located in the Jinlin urban area, it is almost time for the opening ceremony. At this time, the stadium was crowded with people, especially the audience seats, which were full. On the sports field, students from various colleges were walking into the venue one after another, causing countless discussions. "Look, that's the team from Xianan College. The one walking in the front is Xing, right? Yes, that's him. He's the top student from Xianan College. I heard that he will be recommended to the Xiangang Dragon Riders Reserve after graduation. He has a bright future. Look over there, the team from Angshan College has also appeared. The girl leading the team is quite pretty. That's Han Na, the school beauty of Angshan College, but she's not just a pretty face. I heard that she went from entry level to intermediate level perfection in just 1 year. Is it that scary?" Here they are. People from Jiuying College are here too. They're all handsome guys. They're handsome, but the most handsome one is Chen Yuan. Look, he's here, staring at Jiuying. I remember that their 2 colleges had an exchange study session during the summer vacation. As a result, Jiuying beat up all the top 10 masters of Angshan. Chen Yuan was also not vague and beat up all the beauties from Xianan College. Are the boys from Xianan College going to explode? Yes, they did. But no matter in a one-on-one fight or a group fight, they were all beaten black and blue by Chen Yuan. It looks like this big sports event will be a good one to watch. While the audience was discussing, the organizing committee backstage was busy. Where is the Basin Academy? Why hasn't their motorcade arrived yet? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.